And I'll, good morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and gavel in a minute, but if we could get ready. All right, let's go ahead and call this Board of Directors meeting for Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments to order. And got to use the gavel. There we go. And as we start, we always need to establish a quorum. So if I could ask Andy to establish that for us. I believe we do have it, but let's just check.
We do have a quorum, and Mr. Chair, if you're okay, why don't we go around the room and do self-introductions, and then I can help call out who we know is online as far as board members.
Okay, very good. How about we go from my right and then around, and I'll finish up here in the room. So Sharon, if you could start.
Sharon Thompson, Mayor of Fountain, and PPACG First Vice Chair.
City Council, Colorado Springs.
Nancy Hendrickson, City Council, Colorado Springs. Happy Arbor Day, everybody. And second Vice Chair.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem Callahan.
Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner.
Don Wilson, Mayor of Monument, Treasurer.
And Stan Vanderwerf, Chair, and happy Arbor Day. How about that? I didn't know that, so thanks for bringing that up, Nancy. There we go.
Very good.
I learned it's different depending on where you are and the life cycle of trees and the seasons and so forth. So it isn't national today. It's really just, I think, in Colorado.
Okay, thank you. If we could do the roll call also, Andy, online.
Sure. See Commissioner Holly Williams. Good morning. Commissioner Cami Bremer.
Good morning.
Good morning. And representing the city of Cripple Creek, Jeff Mosier. Any other board members online? We need 7 and we're easily past 7 for a quorum, so we're good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I know we did some introductions, but we do offer, if we have any new participants, to introduce themselves. And do we have any new participants? We don't have any here at the table in the room. I don't know if we've got anybody online that we need to worry about, but I'll just give it a moment and see.
This is Miley Foster. I'm the chair of the CAC, the Community Advisory Committee. So I'm just attending today to observe and report back to the CAC.
Great. Thank you, Miley. Appreciate your being with us today. Anybody else?
This is Ann Esch. I'm represent Green Mountain Falls on the CAC. So I just tuned in.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ann. Welcome. And anybody else?
Similar to my teammates before this is Craig Biondo from the Peterson Shaver Garrison, representing Colonel Wilkomsky today for the PPACG. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else? All right. I don't see anybody else chiming in. So let's go ahead and move to item number 2, the agenda approval. Are there any comments or questions from any of the members of the board on regarding the agenda? Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Andy.
I'll just mention one thing. I know that Commissioner Eric Stone raised at the end of last meeting, and Mayor Thompson brought this up as well, about moving the military reports possibly to earlier to the front of the agenda. Didn't have a chance to do further digging into that, but we're going to explore that and maybe make a change at next month's meeting. One thing I would like to do is get some feedback from our military representatives, if they could maybe reach out to me directly and let me know if they've got a preference. I've heard a couple of different things that in years past, they were okay going a little bit later on the agenda. That way they get a sense as to what we're up to as an organization, and they hear reports from other jurisdictions and so forth. But we could work this a number of different ways. And maybe Jess B she can put my email address in the chat in case those military reps don't have my contact info, but feel free to reach out and let me know if you have a preference. If you'd like to do the military reports earlier on the agenda, we can make that accommodation.
Great. Thank you very much. And just appreciate Andy, that you brought that up, because it was a topic of conversation at the last meeting. And I know you'll be reaching out to our military partners and kind of ask what their point of view is. I think you had mentioned to me also that they actually were on the agenda earlier at some time in the past. And then there was a consideration about making sure we got the voting items completed. So,
Right.
but I think what's important here is just to reach out to the military members, make sure that they're either okay with it, or if they have some concerns, and we'll find out.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We still have the agenda to approve. Any other comments or questions from any of the board members?
Move to approve.
All right. There's a motion to approve. Thank you. Is there just
I'll
a moment?
second.
We have a hand up.
Friendly reminder, just to make sure to state your name when making a motion. That way we can catch that in the video in the minutes. Thank you.
Dick Elsner, move to approve.
John Graham, second.
Thank you very much. And Dick, if it helps at all, when you made the motion, I did recognize the voice, so I knew it was you. So, all right. So last opportunity for anybody to make comments or ask questions about the agenda. And hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, the agenda is approved. Let's move to item number 3, public comments and presentations. So we start off with is there any member of the public that wishes to discuss any of the items on the agenda or bring up other topics? I don't see anybody in the audience here stepping forward. Is there anybody online? And I don't see anything there either. So let us move then to 3B, the Older Americans Month Proclamation. And Andy, I think you got this one.
Sure. Actually, Jody Barker, AAA Director, is going to handle this one.
Good morning, Jody.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's my honor to read out this proclamation, and we will ask Chair Vanderwerth and Secretary Elsner to sign the official version. And so if I may, I will go ahead and read this out. This is a proclamation by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors in support of Older Americans Month, May 2022. Whereas the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments includes a growing number of older Americans who make countless contributions to our community every day. And whereas the Pikes Peak region has a rapidly growing population of older adults, And whereas PPACG is stronger when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are included and encouraged to stay engaged and to make their mark on their community. And whereas PPACG recognizes the importance of the physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being of its citizens, especially older adults. And whereas PPACG can support our community members by promoting independence, inclusion, and participation, engaging older adults through education, recreation, and service, and connecting people with opportunities to share their time, experience, and talents. Therefore, the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors recognizes May 2022 as Older Americans Month with the theme of Age My Way, an opportunity for all of us to explore the many ways older adults can remain in and be involved with their communities. We urge every resident to recognize older adults and the people who support them as essential members of our community. Resolved and approved and adopted by the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments this 11th day of May 2022 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for the reading. And by the way, if I heard right, the theme is Age My Way.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's pretty inventive. I like that.
There are just an amazing amount of things that our older adults are doing in our community these days. And we just want to encourage that.
Great. Well, thank you very much again for the reading. Are there any comments from any of the board? I think I can speak on behalf of the board. Thank you for putting this together. And, you know, my humble opinion, every person, no matter who they are, and including our seniors, but really everybody always has the opportunity to contribute to our society. And we know many of our seniors do this as well. And I think it's wonderful that we are recognizing them with Older Americans Month. That's great. So I appreciate the staff putting that together. Yes, Andy.
Just one quick sidebar while Jody's up here. This just went out. It's our bestseller. It's our yellow book. I was going to mention this later in the agenda, but now's a good time. It lists all the senior services across our region, in the 3-county region. Great publicity in the Gazette yesterday or the day before. We skipped, I think, last year, and so we did a major update to it this year. So it's very yellow this year. But honestly, it is our bestseller. We order bunches of copies and get them out across the entire community, and it's highly, highly used. So just wanted to let you know in case you need copies in your office and city halls and so forth.
And just a moment, Nancy. So when you say it's a local bestseller, like how many do you hand out?
Remind me.
So this round, we've already distributed 10,000 copies. That's out to a dozen partnering agencies, as well as through our office. We only have one box hidden away here in the office right now. We have made a second order, and those will be to us within about 3 weeks. So we're very excited to have that coming in again.
Great,
Well,
thank
I'd
you.
like to reserve a case in the second order, please.
Oh, yeah, we can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I don't think she's here today, but Lucy Jacobs, our volunteer coordinator in the AAA, really takes the lead on it, but it's a great team effort with a bunch of other folks helping out there, but really good effort.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Hendrickson.
Yes, so as long as we're talking about it, I just will say tonight, the Senior Resource Council is celebrating folks who give greatly to the senior community with the Hendrickson Accolade Awards. And I, of course, will be there happily celebrating the folks who really give to our senior community. So note on
Thank
that.
you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. So, you know, I'm not aware of any other amazing author in the Colorado Springs area selling huge numbers of books. So I don't know. You can probably make the claim that 10,000 makes you the bestseller. Yes, please.
Andy, what's in that book, in this yellow book?
Go ahead,
That
Jay.
is,
Yeah.
yes, that is our information and assistance directory. Has more than 800 listings of aging service providers and networks across the 3-county region. So it is part of our information and assistance
What are-
priorities.
What are aging service providers? Can you just give some examples? What are we
It can
talking
be
about?
anything from,
Physicians?
sure, it can be anything from transportation providers to home care networks, long-term care communities, anything and everything. Someone who's looking for services for their older adult or themselves can find resources too. We also, if you notice on the front cover, is very large, our primary phone number for the Information and Assistance Network that folks can call in if they can't find it in the
Yeah.
yellow book. they can give us a call, and we're constantly building those resources to make sure that folks have the resources that they need across the 3 counties.
And Dave, Andy just put a book right in front of you there. So you got one.
That's scary because I didn't know he did that. So maybe I made it. Okay, thank you.
You're
It's
welcome.
continually updated online, as well as you see here, the 22 printed version. It's been printed as long as the AAA has been in existence. So it's going on the multiples of tens of years. So
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, Roland Gardine, Mayor, Town of Callahan. This book, Through the Pantry in our town, has actually helped a lot of senior citizens. So it's actually a good plus.
Thank you. Our 3 largest distributors are the Pikes Peak Library District, and we have a wonderful partnership with them for both educational experiences as well as distribution of the book. We also have that at Silver Key Senior Services and the Colorado Springs Senior Center. These are 3 of a dozen organizations and partners around the 3-county region that receive those directly from the printer. We also distributed in person out to Park County, as well as 2 of our providers in Teller County. And so we are really proud that this has made its way out across our entire region already. And the desire for these has been so great that, like I mentioned, we've already moved into a second printing. The cost of printing and materials, much like other areas of expenses, at this time, we decided to print in stages to best gauge the need and the desire for this, and it's overwhelmed us a little bit. So we turned right around the week after we received the shipment and made another order. So we're really excited about that.
And I believe there are references in there also about the public agencies that have services like Department of Human Services and the Area Agency on Aging. So really it's comprehensive. And I can tell you, over the last 5 years that I've been an elected official, I've probably referred to it about 10 times when constituents have called me and asked, hey, where can I get service, whatever. And I may or may not have been able to maybe find it in the yellow book, but I have been suggesting that they get a copy of the yellow book. And in a few cases, I've actually been able to give them a phone number too. So it has helped in a couple of different ways.
Perfect. If you don't have a copy of the yellow book handy, if you give them the 471-2096, you're going to reach, they're going to reach staff members or volunteers, much like we talked about in the proclamation this morning. We have older adult volunteers who come in all day, every day, and answer the phone for folks who either don't know that there's a yellow book, but have been given our phone number as a resource, and we connect them with services or connect them internally for direct services.
Yes, Mr. Gardine.
The other main plus for it is that a lot of the senior citizens out in our community, they don't like internet. They like to have a book in their hand. And they actually they reference it real well.
Yeah, actually, Jody, if I could get, say, out of the next order, 15 of these, like one for each Colorado Springs City Council member, and then for our staff, one for each of the staff. I think it's really looks like it's very useful.
We'd be very happy to do that. We'll reserve a case for you as well. I believe a case is 23 or 33. I can't remember, but we'll reserve a case for both you and Mayor Thompson. And anyone else who may want one, we'll certainly hold them.
Great. Outstanding. Any last comments or questions on this? Oh, yes.
Just one. And
Councilwoman
I don't know how many people here were at the state demographer's presentation recently, but the age 65 plus, I just pulled this up, 58% increase over the next, I believe it is 10 years in that population range. So you'll be printing more and more and more of those,
Yes.
Jody.
Yes, by the year 2035, we'll have more folks over the age of 60 than we will under the age of 18. So that is something that is just a reality for us and what we do and how we serve our communities.
Great. Mayor Thompson.
Just to tag in what Nancy said, is this available electronically online? Because it's their children who are going to be looking for these services and they're going to be not wanting the book.
Correct.
be
And
learning
that's
online.
why we do also have the exact same version online.
Okay.
Is to make that easily accessible for those who are out of town, who we may not be able to mail one to. We're trying to be very careful about the cost of shipping a book. And so we continually update it online. So at ppacg.org/aging, you can find the link for the yellow book, or you can just ask us for a copy and we'll make sure a copy gets to you or to your office.
Okay, so you are updating it, continue during the year online. So it would be
Correct.
really the
We
more
still,
accurate.
that is going to be the most up to date. Through the printings, we won't reprint.
.org/yellow book.
Oh, she's made it even more specific. There we go. ppacg.org/yellow book. Thank you, Jessica. She's made that even tighter. Yes.
Or Libra Amarilla.
Yes. Libra Amarillo is the Spanish version. We did have it translated with some of the last of our CARES Act dollars. And so we're very excited to make that available to expanded members of our community.
Gosh, Jody, this just gets better and better.
We will, in the second printing, we are having Spanish versions printed as well, because we have some events coming up in our outreach. So we're very excited about that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Any last comments or questions on this? The proclamation. We're back to the business on the agenda. So thank you. And hearing none, we do need a motion for the agenda. Would anybody like to offer a motion?
I offer that motion. Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly.
To approve.
And second, Dave Donaldson.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. One last opportunity for any of the members to ask questions or have a comment. And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. This is a vote to approve the Older Americans Month proclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? And thank you for those online as well for your votes. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none. And let the record reflect also that Commissioner Eric Stone has arrived. So thank you for arriving. Appreciate it. And let's move on to our next item. I did get your email saying you might be a few minutes late, so got it for sure. All right. So we are now on to item 3C, staff recognition. I think we have some announcements to make.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to do this from up here real briefly. I just want to announce and introduce 3 new staff members who have joined us here over the past month or so, but also announcing, unfortunately, 3 staff members who are leaving. One's retiring and 2 are moving on. But starting with the folks that have just joined us here recently, really probably the most important thing that I do and Barb Watson, our HR manager, does is make sure we bring really talented people on board. And we've got 3 really fantastic folks that have joined us here in the past month or so. Want to point out, first of all, Carol McBroom just joined us beginning of April as our new finance controller. Stand up, Carol. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Second, want to introduce Melanie Hendrickson. I think Melanie's in the audience. Yep. Thank you, Melanie. Melanie's heading up our direct services team within the AAA. It's our case managers who deal with seniors, navigating Medicare and other service needs that they have across the region related to the stuff that you just talked about. So thank you, Melanie. And then finally, want to introduce Amanda Banfield as our AAA ombudsman. She joined our ombudsman team with Lori McGinnis. And you recall the roundtable we had about a month or so ago, I guess it was back in March, around long-term care needs that our seniors are dealing with. So Amanda is now part of the team along with Marky and Lori to deal with our long-term care facility. So really excited to have them on board. Sorry, Commissioner Stone, I think we stole her from Teller County, but super excited to have her on board.
Andy, if you wouldn't mind, since we do have a bunch of people online, maybe if the 3 could just come up to the podium and just say hello to everybody online and mention your name so people can get an opportunity to greet them virtually.
Come on up, introduce yourselves. Yeah, go for it.
Hey, good morning. Carol McBroom, new controller.
Thank you.
Amanda Banfield, new ombudsman.
Thank you.
Melanie Hendrickson, direct services team supervisor.
Great. Thank you. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Good. Thank you for that. And now the sad part, like I mentioned, 3 staff members will be leaving. Mark Northrup, who might be online, I think. He's a senior transportation planner coordinating our long-range transportation planning needs. moving to Oregon, Washington State for a great job opportunity. So we were sorry to see him get away. So you've seen Mark present here in the past. Also want to announce a retirement. Michelle McGill, come on up, Michelle. She's on our finance team and an accounting specialist, retiring, spent the past 7 or 8 years with us roughly after a long tenure dealing with other finance and accounting needs across the region. She now has a chance to work on her golf game and do some travel and all that good gardening for sure. And related to that, on behalf of the board, we got a plant for Michelle to enjoy in retirement. So
Thank you so much.
you get to pick which color you would like to take. You see, they are heavy. And you see the front facing portion of our services all the time between AAA and transportation and all that. But the work we do in accounting and our admin support, if that's not running smoothly, then the rest of the work just doesn't get done. People don't get paid. So Michelle's been a really vital cog in that with Casey's team in finance. So we're really going to miss her. Carol has taken over some of those duties. So she's passing the torch, but really appreciate all the great work that Michelle's done for us.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. A photo? Yeah, yes. Don't go too far. We're going to take a picture as well.
Okay.
Me and Jessica. And then finally want to mention that Jessica Mcmullan, I think you may have seen the email I sent out earlier this week. She's going to be leaving us the end of May. I think it's May 26th. You want to come up, Jessica, if I can embarrass you for a second? And we're going to get a photo with you, me, and Michelle. But as our policy communications manager, has been with us for the past 5 or 6 years, doing exceptional work with our legislative committee and with communications and the website and a lot of other stuff for us with PPACG. And she's going to be really missed, but thank you for all your contributions as well. So. So quick photo.
And while you're coming up for the photo, I think on behalf of the board, we just would like to thank all 3 of you for the great work that you've done for our community. Just want to express our appreciation for the work that you all have done. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Andy. All right, let us continue with the agenda. Item number 4 are the consent items, and we have 4 items on there. One is the approval of the minutes from April 13. And also, that's the regular meeting, and then the special meeting on April 11. Then the summary of financials is item B for consent approval. Item C is membership appointments, and item D is water quality site applications. So does anybody have any comments or questions for the team before we proceed with the vote? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Dick. Oh. Councilwoman, go ahead.
Yolanda Avila, move to approve.
Dick Elsner, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you, both of you. Do we have any last comments or questions from any of the items on the consent? And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed? Okay, hearing none, those all pass. And let us move now to item 5, action items, 5A, the 22-23 AAA provider funding recommendations. Looks like Jody, you're up again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Agenda item 5A reflects the action that we are requesting to approve the Regional Advisory Council funding recommendations for state fiscal year 22-23. In the summary there, you can see that we received a total requests of $8,035,773. That is a little over $500,000 more than we requested last year, than we received in requests last year. However, at the time of this process, and even as of this moment, we understand that our funding is expected to be flat, which is approximately $5.4 million. That is a difference of expected requests over funding of more than $2.6 million. So you can imagine the challenge that staff were faced with, as well as our technical review subcommittee of the Regional Advisory Council. At the time of the meetings, we did not have the state confirmation of actual funding yet, so we've been working with the assumption of 5.4 million. The approval in front of you that is being requested represents a total allocation of 5.3 million, just a little over 5.3 million, with a reserve of $29,000. As I mentioned in the workshop on Friday, there are two scenarios, best case and worst case scenario, once we do receive our contract allocation for the year. If it is lower, if it is within the reserve that we've set aside, we will make up with the reserve. If it is lower than that, then we will have to adjust proportionally lower. If it is higher, in order to maintain the momentum moving forward, because the RFP process and contract process is about a 9-month process. We don't want to pause too long. But if best case scenario, we receive more than 5.4 million, our intention is after we have signed contracts and effectively begun services July 1, the technical review subcommittee will sit down with whatever overage there might have been and reallocate the balance so that that can be put right into budgets and move forward as quickly as we can with the spending. You'll see before you the action requested is a review and approve the allocations that you see there, and I will leave it at that. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain those now.
Great. And just as a point of reference, but perhaps everybody has already reviewed it, there are the specific funding dollar requests and recommendations for fiscal year 23 SFY 23, and they are in the package. And I can see that in most cases, the requested amount is more than the recommended because the actual dollars available are smaller.
Much smaller. Like I mentioned, just over $2.6 million less than requested.
Right. Very good. So there may be, some people may have questions over one or another of the specific proposed funding allocation. So this is your opportunity to bring those points up. And I think Councilwoman Hingham, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you have a comment or not.
I do. Thank you. This is Nancy Hendrickson. Jody, my question is more broad. It's just, if you could talk to us about the impacts you see or believe will be as the result of a pretty significant decrease in funding this year.
Thank you. I do want to make one slight correction to that, if I may. We're expecting flat funding, so not a decrease in funding. The challenge is not that we're receiving less in funding; it's that the needs are greater. I'd like to make that distinction because during the time of COVID, it really lifted a veil, as it were, people who were not receiving services who realized in order to stay safe and healthy, living independently at home, which is our primary directive, those numbers increased substantially. And so across the board, it didn't matter if it's,
what is it? 2334.
It didn't matter if it were a small organization or a large organization, the needs have increased substantially. In this case, when we look at this 2.6 million, yes, it's a lot of money, but those are real people who will go without services through the AAA. Now, some of the organizations may have access to additional funding through their own grant processes, their own funds, foundations, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, this is $2.6 million of services. Those are real people. I tell my staff, it's Mrs. Smith down the street who I'm concerned about. She may not receive dental assistance. She may not receive meals. She may not receive transportation, and the list could go on. The $2.6 million requested above what we expect to receive is affecting real people and those services across our region. We did have to trim, not just by the obvious difference, we did also look further into usage If the spin down rates were a little conservative, if there were concerns from fiscal or programmatic issues, but at the end of the day, $2.6 million represents real people who will go without services in our region.
Great, thank you. I do note, I'll get to you in just a second, Roland, but I do note in the very last page, I think it's page 26, there's 2 lines there, and I do want to ask about those. One is federal administration, which is 218,000, and state administration, which is 279,000. Now that represents $500,000 out of the total. So could you describe those? Because, you know, at first blush, what it says to me is that's the cost of administering this, which is a huge amount of money. So if that's what it is, my request is to, you know, is there a way to skinny that down so that we can get more money out to people?
I appreciate that, and I am right there with you. However, with the state and federal dollars, administration fees cannot be used for services. They must remain within administrative functions. So in this case, it is the cost of administering everything from the financial to the HR to the actual process of the services that we provide both internally. They cannot be used elsewhere. And so we look at other ways to either expand services or take on services internally so that we can best serve the community. Admin dollars cannot be used for anything other than admin.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question I have, and then I know that Mr. Gardine has a question or a comment. You know, one of the things that I have always felt strongly about is how important it is for seniors to be connected with their families, because families can find amazing ways to do amazing things on tiny amounts of resources, because they can understand their relatives, you know, unique needs best. So I'm interested in I just want to kind of hear the words about this money is helping families to help their seniors, because I feel like that's like a multiplier effect, right? If you can get families to help their relatives, you're going to get a whole lot more out of this money. So is that part of what's going on in here?
Absolutely. Our Family Caregiver Support Center, just as a singular department within the Area Agency on Aging specifically, but ultimately with our providers across the region, we provide support services and so many others to enable families to support their older adult. And again, our directive is to allow that older adult to live well, live healthy, and as independently as possible. And so everything that we do has that directive behind it. So whether that's a direct services out of the AAA offices or through one of our contracted providers, the goal is to ensure that that individual, if they are able to, may remain at home independently as long as possible. It becomes their choice, and we provide the support to that through the variety of services that we offer. For those of you who don't have a yellow book in front of you, if I may ask Mr. Donaldson to hold up the back of the book. Those are all the services that we provide through these contracts. We currently contract specifically and directly with 18 providers. That will expand in this next contract period. We were able to secure assistance to work the 285 corridor in Park County to provide foot care clinics. Again, we don't think about foot care keeping us safely at home, but it can, because it's a part of our wellness. It's a part of our healthy living. And so when we are able to find organizations that can do so much with the funding that we have, there's an amazing amount that they can do with the $4,000 we can give them. My hope is that we're working from the best case scenario that there will be additional funds above the 5.4. And of course, as there are additional funds, whether through emergency distributions or anything else that we're able to receive, that we can find ways to grow the services continually, because ultimately what we're able to provide is just one tiny sliver of supporting families and those individuals to stay at home safely.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Gardine, you had a comment or a question?
Yes, sir. The Silver Key Senior Services. Okay, what area does that cover?
That's all of El Paso County. Right now, they're also in partnership with Pikes Peak Library District serving Calhoun area, for example, with meal deliveries. And they provide everything from case management, transportation, home delivered meals, congregate meal programs, and so much more, counseling services. Boy, the list is just as long as my arm. They are our largest service provider in the region, both by capability, services, and funding. But they do an enormous amount of work for our region.
Thank you.
I would also, if I may, in reference to Calhoun, I'm very proud of the fact that those admin dollars go to work in areas that we don't see on the back of the yellow book. We partner with folks in Rush, churches in Calhoun, food banks in Calhoun and Rush, the eastern side of El Paso County. We make sure that we don't leave them out when we have opportunities. We don't have to be in contract with someone to provide services through them. We're very proud of the fact that we will, for example, the FEMA boxes that we shared before, those went far wider than just contracted organizations. We reached out because we know the need is there. And we reached out to the folks at the food pantry and say, you show up with the truck, we'll load up pallets. And sure enough, they did twice over. Same thing in Rush. I called Pastor Randy at the Church of the Nazarene down there. And I said, can you bring me a truck or trailer? He said, brother, we're ranch country. I got trucks. He showed up and he made it happen. And so that's the kind of outreach that we're able to do far beyond just the list of our contractors. And that's what all of my staff does. We look for opportunities to make sure that our older adults have access to services.
The food bank in Callahan is a major point of contact for the senior citizens. And then we have a bunch of churches, but everybody trusts the food bank. And that's why, man, it's really effective. And that's why these people, man, really get up and take care of business. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Outstanding. And Mr. Donaldson, I thought you had a question there or comment.
Yeah, thank you. It's a question for Jody. Jody, at the bottom of page 24, do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
In Rocky Mountain Health Services, there was a big amount requested, 600,000 really. 650,000. What do they do? It's material aid, assistive tech, ACR, and then they got funded zero on that.
Sure.
What is it they do?
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services provide a variety of services. They have a brain health service. They also have the PACE program. PACE is called Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. As part of the context of this, I will point out just above that at Peak Vista Community Health, their audiology program, you'll see there's a line there, a null. They decided to step out of our contracting process. My staff and I, coming back to our administration, our staff and I sought out audiology providers throughout the community. We had a very, very short time to do this. The Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services, you can see the audiology ACR, they will be picking up a portion of that program. We'll continue to look for additional providers to come back, hopefully to the level that Peak Vista was doing prior. Their assistive technology was for a program called GrandPads. They think of iPads that are skimmed to be easily used by older adults who are not technologically savvy. But as you can see there, it was a $600,000 ask.
Yeah.
We just did not have the capacity for that at this time. Perhaps in future, we might have something like that.
So essentially it was for iPads for the elderly. Like
correct, but
modified
specifically
iPads.
Within their program.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think Mayor Thompson, you had a couple questions as well.
I did, and I had asked this this question before the pre-meeting, and I know you did an introduction, but I still haven't received an answer back yet.
Okay.
On the bottom of page 25, the YMCA, the Pikes Peak region, on the monies that they're receiving. I had asked very specifically on how many of those dollars are coming back to Fountain and Greater Fountain Valley area for their programs, and how they're advertising them outside of just the YMCA for their members, because I have not seen anything advertised locally for people to come down there and take advantage of their services in Fountain. And our seniors need more services in that area down in Fountain. And I want to make sure how they're going to be able to access those dollars. And online, to me, for Tai Chi is, we're past that.
Right.
We're past that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer to the general answer to that we had received from their chief medical officer is based on interest. They determine if they have capacity to do an in-person class, or if they have to spread it across the region and do it online. The introduction, I think, will serve as a continued conversation to encourage more in-person, which is what we're starting to see at both senior centers. Colorado Springs Senior Center has ramped up their in-person programming. Folks at Fountain Valley Senior Center have also ramped up their in-person programming. Because we don't delve into the specifics of their internal marketing procedures, I think that'll be an ongoing conversation. We can find that out and encourage that. I don't have an answer at this very moment, but I appreciate the question being raised, because we can make those introductions and raise awareness for those, because there is a YMCA in the Fountain Security area.
Right. And we've had they used to use a really old gym in Fountain, and now they've moved over to a D8 school building, and they're doing their best to improve it. But I'm kind of a stickler on this, because in Fountain, we have no pool, we have no aquatic center, we have very limited access to anything through the YMCA. Anything you have in your YMCA, appreciate it, because we probably don't have it in Fountain. And I'm not trying to pick on them, I'm just saying that we need to get some equity down in the south end of the valley. We have 130,000 people that are represented down there. We have one YMCA that has very limited services. And I just think that really, really needs to be looked at. And, enjoy what you got if you got it, because the rest of us don't necessarily have it. So, yeah.
Great. I appreciate those comments, Mayor. And that was actually helpful for me to know a little bit about, some of the things you do and don't have down in Fountain.
I would be more than welcome to get you a tour down there.
I bet you would. Yeah. Thank you very much. But Jody, I appreciate your taking up, that topic, and maybe trying to provide an answer to the mayor, and that can be in a separate conversation when you've got the answer, but heightening the awareness of it, maybe there's something that can be done about it down the road. Okay. Any other questions from any of the other members of the board regarding this topic? And hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Dave Donaldson, so moved.
All right, and that's a motion to approve the AAA provider funding recommendations. Item 5A.
Williams, second.
Yes, that's what it was.
Thank you. And Holly Williams is the second.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Any other last minute comments or questions? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you, Jody, for answering a lot of questions on that. There was a lot of interest.
Thank you. My pleasure. And we'll keep doing the good work of serving our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to item 5B, the 2022-2023 5310 Specialized Transportation Funding Recommendations.
Sure. And Laura Cruz, our mobility coordinator, is going to handle this. This is separate funding, but related. It's transportation for seniors and people with disabilities across the region. So, Laura.
Yes, thanks for having me today. I came to you guys last month to open up a public comment period on these recommendations that were made by the TRS. So the TRS this year, the technical review subcommittee of the RAC, both looked at 5310 funding and also the OAA funding for transportation all at one time. We weren't able to pull that off last year because of kind of the hurry up of taking over the program. But this year, it was really great to be able to to have a holistic view of the transportation funding available and trying to figure out what's the right flavor of funding to go with the different programs that were being presented to us as projects to fund. And so what I'm bringing before you today is what I brought before you last month. These are the funding recommendations. We actually have not had any public comments to let the board know that. But the funding recommendations for this year is to fund Invita with $417,528, Silver Key Services with $398,472. And in the course of going through the recommendations for funding for transportation, and again, going back to sort of the flavor of funding that works best with each program, we decided not to fund Fountain Valley Senior Center with 5310, but we took that in consideration when we were looking at the Older Americans Act funding. 5310 funding is FTA funding. We are a direct recipient of FTA funding, which means it's a somewhat prickly program and challenging program to manage, even from our side and on the subrecipient side or provider side. And so we just wanted to work this year with Fountain Valley to kind of build some of their capacity needs. Older Americans Act funding is a little less prickly than 5310. And so really thought that providing that funding through that source would be a great match. So what I'm putting before you is funding for $816,000. This includes 5310 funding, as well as a small portion of that funding that comes from PPRTA through Mountain Metro Transit to help support the program. And so what I'm looking for is a motion today to approve this so that we can move forward in our contracting. We will start contracting with the providers starting July 1, and we will conclude that contract June 30, 2023.
Great, thank you very much. And Mayor Thompson, I'm hopeful that you'll make some comments regarding the Fountain Valley
Actually
Senior
going to
Center.
make a motion to approve, and I fully support the decision of PPACG and the recommendations from the other boards while they make some necessary changes at the senior center.
Very good, thank you.
Nancy Hendrickson, I'll second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. And I do have one question. You did mention there was no public comment. I mean, in theory, we could say that this board meeting, since this is a vote here, could serve as that, but let's just make sure we're not missing something. Just would like some comments from the staff, or actually, Commissioner, why don't you go ahead and provide some
Yeah,
comments?
I think that the idea is we put it out requesting public comment. And if the public doesn't comment, there is no public comment. And that's the position I believe this is in.
Is that what the position this is in? We did put it out
Yes.
and we got no comments.
Correct.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I guess I
Sorry.
misunderstood. I thought there was, I thought based on the words that we didn't send it out for public
No,
comment.
we did.
And actually, we
Okay.
had this on the board agenda last month, and
Correct.
that's what opened up the public comment period.
Thank you,
People knew
appreciate
about
it.
it, but
Yeah. I'm allowed one glitch per day. I appreciate the mayor allowing me one glitch per day. All right, very good. All right, we do have a motion and a second. I'll just ask once again if any of the board members have any questions or comments at this point. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, that passes. That is item 5B that just passed. Let's move on to item 5C, the State Highway 115 Safety and Pavement Reconstruction Funding. Looks like Mr. Leosatos, this is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Directors. This is a little complicated in that we're sort of splitting geographies. In fact, if we could call up the map, I'll get to that in a minute. So actually, instead of my normal sort of shoot from the hip, come up with great analogies, I actually wrote this down and make sure I kept all my thoughts lined up, because again, it does get a little complicated. So State Highway 115, the Safety and Pavement Reconstruction Project, includes roadway and bridge safety improvements on State Highway 115 from mile point 27.7 to mile point 39 by addressing passing lane, right turn lanes, reconstruction the Rock Creek Bridge and performing major rehabilitation or reconstruction on crashed and distressed pavement. CDOT has approximately $45 million budgeted for the project. The low bid was approximately $8 million over that budget. CDOT sent a letter to our transportation planning region, which is TPR number 1, the Pikes Peak MPO, and the Central Front Range Transportation region, which is TPR 14, outlining their plan to move some of the funding around, move some projects back in schedule so that they could accept the bid. The letter was dated April 29th of 2022, and hopefully all of you received it either through Andy for Pikes Peak MPO number 1, or you received it through the Central Front Range TPR. And then for some of you, you probably received it twice. Hopefully, knock wood, our communications actually work and you did get it at least once. Real quickly on the map that you see here, that's the sidebar. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I just want to make sure I touch on it really quickly. Within our Council of Governments, Park, Teller, El Paso County, there are 2 transportation planning regions, and that's the geography by which the state of Colorado does planning. There are 15 TPRs statewide. The first 5 are metropolitan planning organizations, which have the federal designation, which means they're 50,000 in population or above, have a whole bunch of federal rules they have to follow. And then TPRs 6 through 15 are what we call rural TPRs, and they are run through that CDOT process. So again, that's what sort of makes this complicated, is that this particular project runs through 2 of the TPRs. And so what we're doing today here, to clarify, is we're talking about that portion of the project and those projects that need to be moved around for the TPR number 1, the Pikes Peak MPO. CDOT has another process, which I believe isn't as formal, but I think if you're in Central Front Range TPR, you send letters or converse back and forth with that. And I know that's a whole other process. So for those of you who are in both TPRs or actually in Central Front Range, when I'm done here and I hand it over to CDOT to chat, they can let you know about what their plans are for that Central Front Range. But again, that's part of the reason why I wrote this all down. Well, it gets a little complicated. I even have visual aids to show where you're at in some of them. And I apologize. I know that not everybody has the same access to that. So moving on, the process will be today, we're going to chat about, and hopefully it will culminate in you all approving a motion of support. It will then have to go to the Transportation Commission next Thursday on May 19th. If the Transportation Commission approves, then the PPACG TAC later that afternoon would then approve a tip amendment for the project. That tip amendment then would come back to this board for approval. Again, here's the next complication. When CDOT does the bids, they're only good for 30 days or 45 days. That clock is already running. So if your show a motion of support today, when it goes to the Transportation Commission next week, and then the TAC next week, we'll run out of time before it comes back before your next board meeting. So if you are inclined to support this request, the next sort of ask is, will you agree to doing a special a special board meeting to approve the tip amendment to make sure that everything runs smoothly? And we won't put the cart before the horse. Let's wait till you say you like this and this is something you want to support. And then Andy and others can sort of give you the dates of a special board meeting if you're so inclined on doing that. The other sort of thing is, again, typically things are processes TAC, which we will have a TAC meeting, CAC, and then board. So the CAC, given the hurried process of this to meet with the timeline of making sure we get to keep that bid, we would have to poll the CAC committee via email, send something out saying, hey, we're going to have a telephonic, or nowadays, I guess it's a Zoomophonic board meeting on this date. Please give us any of your comments, and then we will relay those back to you all. moving forward. Then that would be the process. So next, I want to make sure I cover two more things, and then I'm going to turn it over to CDOT to answer any of your questions. The letter dated on the 29th had an error in the body of the letter. It called out $1.2 million coming from the MPO or TPR number 1 to make up that $8 million shortfall, but then proceeds to list $980,000 in contributions from different projects. The $980,000 is the actual number. It is not 1.2. So of that shortfall, 980 is coming from TPR number 1 or the MPO. The remainder of the funds would come from a Central Front Range and other things. I think Shane kind of ripped up the sofa and got all the money out of the cushions and stuff like that. And then finally, normally
that would be your analogy for today, right?
yes, that was
Okay.
my one allowed analogy. Thank you.
All right.
Normally, we know that the Board of Directors likes to hear the thoughts from the Transportation Advisory Committee or TAC on these types of items. But with the timing such as it was, where TAC is not going to meet till next Thursday, we had not had the opportunity to meet prior to the board meeting. So we did email the TAC, the memo that's in your packet, as well as the letter. And we asked them if they had any issues to reach out to us and let us know. We didn't hear anything, but we also encouraged them to join the board meeting today and let them know that they would have an opportunity. So real quickly, if anybody from the TAC, I see Gail turned her camera on, would like to talk about it. Anybody else from the jurisdictions? I know the board values your input.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Gail Sturdivant with the City of Colorado Springs. John has informed us, as long as CDOT with this requested change, and the City of Colorado Springs is going to be in support of this recommendation when the TAC meeting meets next week.
Thank you very much. And it looks like Jennifer, you have something you'd like to make a statement as well.
Yeah, I would just add from El Paso County staff perspective, I do have folks on the TAC. We have reviewed the proposal. We do support it. And, you know, I have spoken with CDOT and talked with them about making sure that we have a plan to, you know, do the other unfunded work, you know, the work that was kind of cascading back, as Rich calls it, so that we do make sure that we have a plan to do that in the future so that it doesn't fall off the radar. I just know that's important, I think, especially from a CFR perspective, because they really worked with us to make sure that funding that we received as a region, including the CFR, Central Front Range TPR. We also received a bunch of money a couple years ago, and that went to funding the research interchange. And we want to make sure that their projects are held whole too. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much for those comments.
And if there's no other tech comments, Mr. Chair, that sort of concludes my overview. If you have any 50,000-foot questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm going to hand it over to Rich and Shane to give you more detail and answer a majority of your questions.
Before we go there, I do see a hand up from one of our board members, Commissioner Williams. Please go ahead and make whatever comments you're interested in making.
Yeah, and maybe Rich and Shane could address this when they come up as well. So I was the beneficiary 2 or 3 years ago on the Research Powers Corridor. I know that Commissioner Stone has expressed concern. So what's going to happen to the Central Front Range paving projects? When will those be brought up? And how soon can we get those done as well?
I appreciate that comment. I had a similar kind of question because you are taking a few bucks out of some other projects. So it would be good to know what the impacts are to those other projects, or if it's a timing delay, or maybe not a big impact, or maybe it's severe. So that would be great if you include that in your comments. And one other comment that I'll add, and then I see that Lisa Hickey has a comment or question as well. So this is a PPACG contribution of just under $1 million, but the shortfall was 8 million. So how do we make up the difference? Maybe you have that in your prepared responses as well. Would it be great? And so Lisa, if you have a comment or a question, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all. I really have just a high level comment to say thank you for considering this so that we can get these important projects done. We will keep looking for all the funds we can do to promptly fill in the gap that we are creating in terms of the Central Front Range funding and projects. Those are critically important also. We recognize that, but we really appreciate us being able to continue to keep moving.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. And I would agree, all these projects are important, but this 115 project is also important. It is amazing to me if you were to go down there and see it, maybe many of you have, you've got a high-speed multi-lane highway 115 doing 90-degree turns on the residential roads, in many cases having no acceleration or deceleration lanes. That produces a dangerous environment for the residents there. And that is part of this project. And I know how important that is to the residents for overall safety. And then the other item is you've got a bridge there that's very, very narrow, has no ability if somebody were to drive off the road right at the wrong moment, and there's some uphill and downhill. So if it's snowy, it's slip. And if they come across that bridge off the lane, they're going to hit the side of the bridge. So part of this project is to widen that bridge. So you've got emergency lanes, I believe, on both sides that adds to the safety of that bridge. So the project is important. So if we could ask CDOT to respond to some of those comments and questions, that would be awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to kick this off, then I'm going to turn it over to Shane to go through the very, very detailed specifics of what's contained within the memo. But I think as a lot of people throughout the state have recognized, it's a pretty tough bidding environment right now, given the economic climate that we're seeing. The cost escalation for materials, for fuel, everything is really tough right now. And so I think most people in this room are aware that we have rejected a couple of projects within PPACG and or Central Front Range. One of those projects is a project in the Fairplay area, US 285 and Highway 9. Another project that was just referenced right now was an overlay project that we have going basically through Woodland Park on US 24. On those particular projects, we decided not to try to pursue awarding them because what we saw in some of the unit pricing was pretty high and, quite frankly, unexpected, even given the current economic conditions. So as an example, we would expect to see, $100 or so plus ton price for asphalt. On those couple of projects, we were seeing about 150. So, it felt like the prices were severely inflated. We also recognize that I think we can do some scope adjustments on those projects, change out some design elements, change out some project phasing, those kinds of things that would hopefully help us in terms of economy of scale and the ability to award those projects at a future date. So we did elect to reject those projects. Both of those projects we're actually going to re-advertise in the October timeframe of this year. So projects are not dead. We're working on some adjustments on the US 285 job to change out some concrete elements, some of the concrete retaining walls for a different design type that we think will provide some economy for us. There was also some very specialized concrete that was on that particular project that was initially spec'd. We're making some changes with regard to that hopefully help with pricing. And then for the US 24 resurfacing job, we're going to combine it with another project to the west, basically that ties on to what the western limit of this project would have been. And, hopefully see some economy of scale coming out in October timeframe. Number one, it's a bigger project, so hopefully the ton price comes down a little bit. And number two, we're advertising that project at a better time of year for resurfacing projects. Typically we try to advertise our resurfacing projects in the fall because as contractors start to fill up, they become less and less interested and less competitive. So, we hope by advertising in October that we will get better pricing because we're early in the year. They know they can have that on their plate. It's a very, very large job. So hopefully that'll help us with that. And I'll address Commissioner Stone's concerns, towards the end of my comments here, but that brings me to the 115 project. Unfortunately, the 115 project, we got bids in late April. And as was noted, they came in, including our C and indirect costs, approximately $8 million over what we had budgeted for the project. Unfortunately, with this project, there's not a really ability to scale back or to do a different design or those kinds of things. So, given the safety implications associated with the project, we feel like it's really important to try to award this one. Also, we didn't see the same issues with like asphalt pricing on this project. We were down around about $109 a ton, if I remember correctly. So more in the area that we would have typically expected even, in these economic times for that project. So We really don't think there's anything we could do different. My fear is if we don't award the project and we advertise it at a future date, we may get a smaller scope for the same price, given how the economy is going. So that's why we're pursuing trying to award the particular project. We have spoken with the contractor. They've agreed to honor their bid beyond the required 30 days to allow this to proceed forward as well. And so the funding we're looking at comes from various sources throughout PPACG and Central Front Range. Again, as John noted, a portion of the project is at the southern end of PPACG's limits. And so that's why we're looking towards a funding contribution, and it's a nominal contribution for the overall cost of the project and the increase. Some of the places that we're looking at are project closeout savings. So we've got a number of projects, throughout our entire region that have, they've completed construction. We have a nominal amount remaining in the project budget. So we can debudget those, reallocate them to it somewhere else. And so we're looking to take advantage of that within our region. Another thing is shuffling of projects. So as you'll note in the memo, it mentions the Central Front Range resurfacing project that we are proposing to pool roughly, I think, about $5 million from. That doesn't mean that project is dead. We're just looking to basically delay that project likely for about a year and re-advertise it at a future point. And speaking with our materials engineer and our pavement experts, they think that the pavement is in decent enough condition that that's not going to be a significant issue for us in terms of delaying the project. So, and then finally, the final source of funding is just some unallocated funding we have within the region. There was a nominal amount of some RPP that we hadn't budgeted from recent years. We're looking to use some actually future year money as well in order to fund the shortfall. So again, just in quick summary, PPACG, we're looking for, just under $1 million. Central Front Range, the majority of the project is within their limits and their contribution is roughly about 5 million. And then the unallocated sources are roughly about 2 million. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shane to talk through some of the specific projects.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Good morning. So I'll go through the specifics as far as the numbers real quick. And just for your information, RPP stands for Regional Priority Program, and then CBP is Critical Bridge Program. I think the rest of the terminology here is self-explanatory for the most part. If not, please let me know if you have any questions. Within PPACG, we're closed out the 31st Street and US 24 resurfacing project about a year or 2 years back, and close out of that project, we have about $475,000 that we would like to utilize. The 21st or State Highway 21 and research project currently under construction, we have about $225,000 that's not being utilized for that project that we'd like to bring onto the 115. And then on Fillmore to Garden of God project currently in design, we have about $80,000 that's Critical Bridge Program CBP, which we believe is fluid enough at this point to be able to utilize on 115. We're closing out projects currently where we believe that money will be able to be backfilled into that Fillmore to Garden of God's project at a later date once that goes to advertisement to make up that difference. Within Central Front Range, we have a State Highway 67 project that was scoped for about $234,000. That is utilizing RPP. That is no longer to be scoped at this time. The surface treatment project that Rich alluded to was State Highway 69 from Hillside to Texas Creek at about $4.8 million. We're working with our surface treatment plan as well as our engineers just to continue with the design. We'll have that on the shelf and ready to go for a future date here within the next year to 2 years. That gives Central Front Range contribution about over $5 million. And then unallocated funding within the region totals up to about $2.1 million of just monies turned back from closeout projects from FASTER, as well as Senate Bill 267 projects, a couple of funding sources of RPP in fiscal year 22 and 25 that are currently unallocated to bring that total to $2.1 million of just unallocated funding. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
All right, great. Thank you very much. My sense of it is this feels like trying to use some unique approaches to scrape a few dollars together to allow this project to go forward. And you're actually pulling subsets of the money required from several different locations. I actually appreciate that kind of an approach because you're trying to find a way to make this happen So I'll just express my appreciation to CDOT for doing that. I do want to make sure that for all of our board members who have other projects that, you know, might have a delay on their project or might have some kind of change on it, to make sure that they're good with that as well, kind of looking at the overall good perhaps. But Commissioner Stone, I think you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Rich and Shane. You know, obviously we've had some talks over the last couple of weeks about this. Want to make sure everybody's clear though, is that the US Highway 24 resurfacing and those has nothing to do with the Highway 115 project and where those funds are coming from. They're different situations, different issues. And I won't speak later to it, but Rich, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about it, just so that everyone is aware on the board. On the US Highway 24 resurfacing project, which was to go from Chipeta Park to the other side of Woodland Park at Trout Creek Road, came in high. It's been delayed. They're going to look at re-engineering and then also adding in the next section, which was scheduled for 2023, which is all great. We appreciate that and understand why it could not be, you know, why the bid could not be awarded. The biggest number one concern that I have, and I think is shared by the members of the Woodland Park City Council as well, is that the Highway 24 resurfacing project was originally scheduled for 2021. Did not happen in 2021 because of needs for right-of-way for ADA. So it didn't happen then, but because it didn't happen, they also had, to our knowledge, there was no repair work, patchwork, or crack sealing that was done that 12-month period. Now we moved into another 12-month period, also not scheduled for maintenance because it was scheduled for resurfacing. It has now become a very dangerous and falling apart roadway in many places. A lot of those places are actually on the El Paso County side of the line. We're extremely concerned about the safety of motorcyclists coming through this area. When you look at the way that pavement is coming apart, it would be very easy for it to, you know, to grab the tire of a motorcyclist and literally just throw them off their bike. And of course, with the volumes of traffic that we're now seeing on Highway 24, is regardless of whether it's Teller County, El Paso County, is that all of everywhere east of Teller County uses that as the primary source to get to the mountains. Memorial Day is coming up, July 4th is coming up. Last word I got from you guys was you're trying to work it in on some federal highway funds that might come available in late July or August, which obviously we're going to miss a majority of this heavy traffic season and the two largest peak days of the year, which are, or weekends, I should say, not even days, because the new term in Woodland Park is that Thursday is the new Friday, because the traffic's so bad that people go up Thursday instead of Friday. But we're just really concerned about it. And it's life, health, safety. It's not, geez, it's not pretty and pristine and smooth and beautiful. It's just that it is a significant life, health, safety issue that, in our opinion, and I realize, and I'm sure you guys share the opinion, is that it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible, because we're now 2 years delayed on maintenance that probably would have happened had it not been scheduled for resurfacing. And it's slipped through. It's nobody's fault, but it exists as a safety issue. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of exactly what the problem is, because it's going to affect all of us if you go to the mountains. And most importantly is the people, you know, they're traveling through there. I mentioned motorcyclists, but of course, towed vehicles and others, as you get into those situations, is another safety hazard. And anytime you have an accident in there with the volumes we're talking about, and it's going to be more than just one vehicle that's involved. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Great comments. And I think the comments are well spoken. You know, I drive up that way a lot, and I know that road does need to be resurfaced. And certainly if there's safety concerns and motorcycles possibly, you know, getting involved in accidents because the surface is difficult. So I'll just ask CDOT to respond to that, and let's see if there's, you know, and also it makes sense, right, in trying to get economies of scale about combining those two projects and going to a bigger bid and maybe getting some price value out of it. So I appreciate that logic as well.
And Mr. Chair, if I may also, I do want to say I fully support what they put forward and appreciate all the work that they put forward to figure out how to get 115 done this year. I think you got a good plan. So I do support that.
Okay, great. And if I could ask CDOT to respond to the concerns, these are the interim concerns until you get that get that road resurfaced.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Stone, for your comments. We've had many conversations about this, and CDOT does agree with your assessment. There are some significant concerns, and we're going to be working to address them this summer. Shane has identified some money currently, so we can buy some hot mix for our maintenance forces to be able to get out there and do some work probably sooner rather than later. I will be speaking with our maintenance forces. If there's some very, very critical areas that we need to address immediately, trying to find a way to do that sooner rather than later. And so, it's not going to be ideal. Similarly, even if we had the resurfacing project, I'm not sure all of this stuff would have been covered up, in advance of the various holiday weekends this summer. But we will do something this particular summer and as soon as we possibly can to get the pavement through the winter in a safe manner. So we are committed to doing that, and we'll take care of that.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that response as well. We've got a couple of folks that have their hands raised, or at least there was somebody online that had their hand raised, Jeff Mosier, but maybe he pulled his hand off. And I see also that Mr. Donaldson, you have your hand raised. So Mr. Donaldson, if you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. And thank you, Richard and Shane. Shane, could you just touch again that the Fillmore to Garden of the Gods project, we take 280,000 from the critical bridge project, and you said you thought it was fluid enough to, can you just say that part again?
Yeah, so yes, and so looking at the scope of the work on 115, that's within the PPACG area. We have that bridge replacement essentially. And so what falls within where we can utilize funds, RPPs are most flexible, but then also we have critical bridge program, which can be utilized and put on replacement of that bridge on 115. So the 280,000 that's currently programmed into the Fillmore, the Garden of the Gods, that project as a total is about 45 or $49 million. And the majority of that, if not all but this small portion, is from Senate Bill 267 funding. And so the first thing is it's a very, very small portion of that whole program or that whole project that we are asking to utilize for Fillmore to Garden of the Gods. But secondly, we currently have projects that, for instance, the State Highway 94 project, phase 1 that we completed last fall. It's being closed out currently, and we have some monies that are going to be turned back into the region. And so I can go back and backfill that $280,000 with that color of money instead of just the CBP. So this allows us to have it available today, essentially, for 115.
No, I understand. Thank you. That clears it up.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And is there anybody online that has any questions? I did see a hand raised earlier, but I think that was pulled down. Just want to make sure everybody's got an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jeff Mosier from Cripple Creek. And I just want to second Commissioner Stone's comments. One of the issues, the wear and tear on the roads is happening at a more rapid pace with our construction projects in Cripple Creek. So we have some large oversized load semis going through in off hours, early morning, late night, to get huge concrete parking ramps pieces brought up to town. That's for the Bronco Billy's project. In the next month or two, we're going to break ground on the Triple Crown project as well. So this wear and tear, if we don't start patching some of those dangerous spots, we are going to have more issues than just motorcycles, I think, with trailer campers and that type of thing bouncing around. So yeah, the faster we can address those issues on 24, the more safe it's going to be for our commuters heading to the mountains.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know if CDOT, you want, maybe the response to that question is the same response you gave to Eric, but if you have more to say, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've got nothing more to offer other than, we're working on it. We've identified some funding in order to be able to help out our maintenance forces. They have budget issues themselves, but we've identified some project funding that we can move around to them.
Okay.
To help. And, we're going to be working on getting out there as soon as we can. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead.
This is Nancy Hendrickson. This is just a question of personal note. I did not know about State Highway 69, and I wondered if anybody's traveled it and could tell me a little bit about it. I just looked it up on the internet. It looks quite beautiful, but Just anybody ever been on State Highway 69 before?
I mean, it runs through West Cliff and various other areas. I don't know.
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner, Park County. I've been on it a few times because our fair uses West Cliff meat processing for all of the animals sold at our fair. I know a couple of years ago, CDOT put a lot of money into 69 from Hillsdale South, I believe. And this is kind of to do the rest. The amount of traffic on the road, I waited in the middle of summer for 15 minutes while they were doing the other work. And I think it ended up with about 10 cars. So it's not a road that is used a lot. It is a very pretty road. And eventually it will need some work, but I don't think it's a critical issue right now.
Maybe a good road to do a nice road cycling trip on?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Cars are good on the road. That's about, it's narrow in a few spots.
There's not much of a shoulder at all.
We don't have shoulders in the mountains.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's much of a shoulder, and I think it winds around and goes up and down a lot. So it'd be a lot of work on a bicycle and probably in some places a little dangerous. However, it is a beautiful area. Yeah. Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, hearing none. I do appreciate the responses. And if I understand this correctly, right, so we're working on putting a few dollars through here, but these particular contributions of 980,000, you do need our approval. I actually also appreciate just stating up front that because of the timing requirements, we got to do a couple of things out of cycle here. And I appreciate the board's indulgence and willingness to consider that, because we normally don't do that. But in this case, this is kind of a matter of urgency. And if, again, one other point, if we get this done, if we do vote for this, that I think would be helpful when Lisa goes to Transportation Commission to get their approval to pull the rest of the dollars in, because the 980 isn't enough to get us all there. So that I think is kind of what's before us. John, did you have a last comment?
No, sir, Mr. Chair, I was just here to nod my head enthusiastically as you were restating, but that was correct. Yes.
Okay.
We can, hopefully, if there's a motion for support that gets approved right now, that everyone's cool with this, then real quickly, we just would like to take a few seconds to talk about scheduling that Zoomophonic board meeting that will have to happen out of cycle so that we can take advantage of this bid still.
Okay, very good. And that must be a new word, Zoomophonic.
I'm going to copyright it. I think I could get a couple bucks.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Thompson.
I was going to be the cool one and make the motion to approve.
I think we're at that point. Please proceed.
Oh, motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Don Wilson.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. And one last opportunity for any comments or questions from members of the board. All right, hearing none. Oh, John, I see your mic on. Do you have comments or questions? Are you good?
No, I'm good. I was just waiting for the call.
Okay, very good. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, no opposition. So that passes. Thank you very much. We look forward to a good outcome from the Transportation Commission meeting.
And Mr. Chair, members of the board. So yes, if the Transportation Commission does pass it next Thursday, I believe, then our TAC, it'll be on our TAC agenda for Thursday afternoon. So the TAC will look at the TIP amendment, and then that's where we need to have a little additional discussion of, with the upcoming holiday and everything else, when can we schedule a Zoomophonic board meeting? I just went out of my way to say that because it's so fun. So Andy, I don't know if I want to just hand this over to you, since the
well, if I might,
not my
yeah, if I might offer some comments, and just from some experience when I was sitting on the Pikes Peak Workforce Center board, when we would get funding from the federal government that needed to be passed inside the cycle of our monthly meetings, we would actually have what we called 5-minute board meetings, because we had one single topic to address, and that was to vote up or down the acceptance of money. In this particular case, it would be acceptance of a program, acceptance of a TIP amendment. So I think it's fairly straightforward and simple. So I think I've done it before and it actually works really well. One of the fun things in the Workforce Center meetings, they literally were called 5-minute board meetings. And if I went to 6 minutes, I got in trouble. So they were really, really short. Some we did by Zoom, but actually most we did just simply by telephone call in. And they worked reasonably well. So I think something along those lines is how we could deliver this outcome before we get to next month's PPACG meeting. So I would offer a proposal that we support something like that to be used not all the time, just to be used rarely, once in a while when we've got a timing issue. And I'd be interested now in the board's comments or thoughts on that. And Andy, if you've got anything to add, that'd be great as well.
Just a couple of possible dates I'll throw out there. Monday, May 23rd, I think we tentatively scheduled for our final legislative committee meeting for the season that morning. So that morning could be a possibility for a 5-minute meeting. Otherwise, looking possibly at Thursday, the 26th or Friday, the 27th. And I still think that keeps you within your bid dates, correct?
The 26th is Fort Carson has their Memorial Day service that some of us may be attending at 10 a.m.
Okay. Good to know.
The other thing is, whatever we pick, let's go ahead and notice it, whether we
Yes.
have it or not, so
Yeah.
that we get into our proper notification.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor, because that's exactly the reason why we can't, sometimes we bring you things and you can say, oh, well, we empower the executive director to do this or whatever. Because this is a TIP amendment and it's it's got to go through the federal process, which means it all has to be properly noticed. So the second you guys say okey dokey, Danelle, who's on the line here, is going to put together that TIP amendment. It's going to be available for people to comment on. But when you actually meet, the problem with some things you could do a telephone conference for, this particular one, because the public has to be able to attend either in person or whatever, we may need to go ahead and continue to do it via Zoom. But there are other things in the future where a telephonic, not as fun as Zoomophonic, but a telephonic meeting would be appropriate.
Great. I think it's just fair to let the staff figure out if it needs to be Zoom or telephone. We'll just let you worry about that. And
23rd. I'd like to propose the 23rd, and then if people want to stay on for the legislative wrap up, they can do that. Otherwise, they can go on for the day. And that would be 8:30 on Monday morning.
Yep.
great. And 8:30 on Monday morning. I'm not 100% sure if I can participate, but I don't have to be there. We just need a quorum. So I have an Angel flight scheduled for that day. But that I think might be at 9:30. So there's a possibility, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, having said all that, I may not be able to attend, but I'm happy to support the morning of the 23rd. And we just need to make sure we've got a quorum.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to say probably 4 or 5 of us already have it on our agenda for the wrap up for the legislative committee. So that might.
Yeah,
Pretty fast.
combining it with that.
Yeah.
And maybe then for those that may come in for the legislative wrap up, that can be part of the board team, and then the remainder can maybe zoom in. And then maybe between those two, you get your quorum without any problem. And we have that conversation at that point. And Mayor Thompson, if you can be at that, and I may not be able to be at that, so that might be something you chair.
Between Nancy and I, we'll get it figured out, right? One of us will be there.
Okay, very good. Any objections to the 23rd? All right, and before we proceed, though, I see, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the board for your support on this, and anything we can do to give certainty to the contractor, I think would be greatly appreciated by them as well. So we definitely appreciate your willingness to do things a little bit out of normal order.
Yeah, we thank you for that, and we appreciate your willingness to have flexibility in trying to make this happen as well. So this is a thank you, I think, to you as well. So thank you so much. All right, so I think we'll propose then and go forward with trying to set that up for the 23rd. And I believe we are done with this item at this point. Let's move on to 5D, which is the legislative update. And Jessica, if you could come up. And congratulations again on your new job that you've got coming.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Jessica Mcmullan, your Policy and Communications Manager. It's time for your legislative updates. in the bills that you have for new proposed positions. I do want to give you a couple of quick briefs. Senate Bill 22-230, the collective bargaining, is already on third reading for final passage today. House Bill 22-1372, 1379, and Senate Bill 215 have all passed Senate third reading and are waiting on signatures. Senate concurrent resolution 002, the homestead property tax exemption expansion is dead, postponed indefinitely. And then Senate Bill 193, 200, 203, and 159 have all passed third reading, or Senate has considered House amendments and concurred. So those are all waiting on signature. So all of the bills that are on our proposed motion are either done or dead. But on the good side, one of the bills, Senate Bill 22053, Health Facility Visitation During Pandemic, which we strongly supported, is on third reading today. So it's on the calendar to be approved. Session ends tonight at midnight. So any bills that are not currently on the calendar won't go anywhere. We've got a few left in our list, which you can always access on State Bill. That link is always in our memos and is active all the time. Does anyone have any questions about legislative session, about movement or comments? I know Dick should have one on the
Yes,
fire ponds.
I have a really big one. It was one that CCI had taken on to protect water in ponds in our rural areas from being drained because they had been ponds for 80 years but didn't have water rights. So that bill actually, it's amazing how quickly things happen right at the end because it is now on the way to the governor for his signature. It is a huge win for rural areas in the mountains especially. And I want to thank Andy Pico, who did a spectacular job as one of the co-sponsors trying to make sure things happen the way they should. He testified. And then when we started off on this, it was like, okay, we got 2 in the House, 2 in the Senate, 1 on each side. It sounds pretty good. In the House sponsorship, Representative Exum added his name to it and Snyder and Carver. So we had great representatives from this area helping us along. Unfortunately, my representative who lives in Fremont County decided to vote against it. But I think that's going to come back to bite him as he's running for Senate. But I really appreciate the help from PPACG putting their name on it. And it's not what I wanted because I wanted all the water, but it was a really good compromise with a lot of the water districts, end users and everything. And I just want to say that is probably one of the biggest wins a lot of the mountain communities have had in a long time out of the legislature to be able to protect ourselves from fires. And have, the fire department show up with water, not long sticks and hot dogs. Thank you.
I really do want to add on to Dick's statement right there. Dick has said it's great for our rural communities. The more important part, a lot of the wildfires that impact our wildfire urban interfaces, which is every single community has part of that, those start in the rural areas. This is going to help the wildfire prevention and address them throughout all of the PPACG regions and municipalities. It's not just rural, even if they're the ones who get to be the starting source there. So
yeah,
it's
and
really helpful.
I'll make a point. I'm thrilled that is going to get through to pass. I don't know what the amendments were, so I don't know some of the nuances of that, but let me tell you all a story about a resident in El Paso County. This is of benefit to El Paso County as well. And this is somebody that resident that's in the Rampart Range area. So it is a rural area. But without this bill, they were being compelled by the state to drain their pond. It's a big pond. They were using that for their own private purposes. And they refused initially to drain that pond, and the state started fining them. And when they got to $30,000 in fines, they finally gave up and drained the pond. That family was so mad at the state that the state was forcing them to drain their pond and was fining them, and they couldn't understand it because it was their own personal pond. So as a result of that, they got really, really mad. And for those of you that may know, then the Pike National Forest got $18 million to do fire risk mitigation. But to do risk mitigation in the Rampart Range area, they needed access on the private road that was owned by this same family. And their reaction to the $30,000 fine from being forced to drain the pond was that they want nothing to do with the state or federal government. So when the Pike National Forest asked for access to the road, they said not only no, but hell no. And so the project to do fire risk mitigation is held up because the fire service could not get access to that road because the family was so mad that they were being compelled to drain their pond. So if this bill allows them to hold their pond, we might be able to break that loose and do fire risk mitigation. And I find that to be an amazing story because it talks about the interweaving complexity of all these things that happen. So that is actually something that was going on in Western El Paso County, specifically in my district, an issue that I was dealing with. So yes, Mr. Elsner.
Yeah, the beauty of the bill is once the governor signs it, a county can say, gee, these are ponds we're worried about, and the state cannot drain them until the rules are created around how they're going to manage it. And I think they gave us 6 months to come up with those rules. So you figure this fire season, the ponds should be pretty safe. And then they'll have the mechanism that you'd have to follow to be able to protect ponds. It is limited. It's not all of them. We did have to throw in the fact that, downstream users really still want the water that's evaporating. But it at least puts us in a position where we can say, you really can't right now because we're considering these things. And that'll give us some time to, one, identify which ones are the most important, and the ones that are secondary, we may not be able to protect them under this bill, but it gives you more time to figure out, is there augmentation water you can get? I think, in Park County, this bill is probably going to save Park County close to $2 million in trying to figure out, well, can we identify augmentation water and how much is it going to cost? And we figured it's about $2 million in savings to Park County because of this bill. And then we can then look at other ponds that, well, they don't quite fit in, but it'd be worthwhile augmenting those. So it really helps our communities.
I think it'll really help as well. And one of the other challenges is this particular privately owned pond, the owners of the pond were letting the Forest Service use the pond for firefighting. And then the state was forcing them to drain the pond. And it's not a small pond, privately owned pond, but it was a couple acres in size. It was a huge pond. And it was an enormous amount of water. And it was put to use in the Waldo Canyon fire. And they were being forced to drain the pond, which just was making everybody mad up there. So yes, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and Dick, I do want to express our great thanks from Taylor for your leadership on this, finding sponsorship for it, bringing it forward. When you get out between the Continental Divide on the center and Rampart Range and that eastern range that runs, there's not a lot of water in there that's not in a river. It's really limited. The creeks are small. These historic ponds really are core to the firefighting efforts of knocking down fires. Teller County, we've had 4 fires in the last 4 weeks. All of them knocked down immediately because of closer availability of water resources. Luckily, one was close to, unfortunately, one was close to Woodland Park. The good news was that there was water adequately available close to Woodland Park, so they were able to knock it down. But out on Teller 1, there was another fire where water was available through a couple of ponds that they were able to quickly refill. And that's the big challenge out there. Moving on though to that SB 230, the collective bargaining bill. First off, I do want to thank the members of PPACG for their help and in opposition to that bill. Because of the united opposition from counties, from CML, the Colorado Municipal League, from the Colorado Association of Districts, which I got the name wrong, but that's what they are, as well as about 5 other associations of small local governments have all stood up and opposed the bill. Because of that, there have been significant amendments that have made it less bad. They have exempted about 14 of the smallest counties out of the edict, which is good. This was going to be just a nightmare for the mineral counties of the world, the Hinsdale counties of the world that had very limited resources and very small employee bases. So they got written out of that. There's some other things that have come forward that I hesitate to use the word improved, but made it less bad. Also want to thank Stan and other members of the Paso County Commissioners and Park County Commissioners as well. We've been whipping up support for a letter to the governor asking for a veto. We're now up to approximately 200, I believe slightly over 200 local county elected officials that have signed on to that letter. We're still working on it. I do want to say, as being the primary whip for that, it's not a great job. So if you ever get elected to the legislature, don't volunteer for whip. It's a tremendous amount of work to be a whip, but nonetheless, I'm very appreciative of the support. As Jessica mentioned, it is on the floor for third reading today. Still battling, still fighting. And unfortunately, the majority right now has decided to sacrifice hundreds of bills that actually solve problems in the state of Colorado in order to get a bill that doesn't solve a single problem. And that's, I think, the most frustrating thing about this entire bill is that it is a bill in search of a problem. And whether they get it across the finish line today, I don't know, but I do know that there's a lot of bills that had the potential to solve some problems in Colorado that will die on the vine because they have spent, my goodness, days working on getting this collective bargaining bill through. I guess it's the nature of an election year. Sometimes you got to pay off the people that pay you. I think that's the motivation behind this. But again, a lot of appreciation for everyone. The fight's not over yet on this, but
and thank you, Mr. Stone. One other comment about the over 200 elected officials that have signed up to that letter recommending that the governor veto the bill. I just think, to state for the record, that is a bipartisan letter. There are Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike that have all signed up to that bill, and it's over 200 people that have signed up to it. So it's not a single party kind of concern. It's a multi-party. It's just a citizen and elected official concern about the costs associated with it. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and Mr. Chairman, also, the big thing to point out on this, and it impacts PPACG so much, is because number one, it represents the largest unfunded mandate in the history of the state of Colorado to local government and municipalities. You're next. They've already said it. People that have testified in favor of this bill have clearly stated that this is not the end of it, that it will continue on, and their desire is to push that in. And the biggest problem with it in mandating it is that, when King Soopers went on strike, which I believe was their right as organized workers in Denver, people had the choice whether or not to continue to do business with King Soopers or go to Safeway or Albertsons or another outlet to shop. But you know what? If snowplow drivers go on strike, who plows the roads? There is no choice. If sheriff's departments go on strike, who answers the calls? Perhaps nobody. And that's the difference between public service and private companies, is there's competition out there in the world of private companies, and services are available in other places. But with counties and cities, is that we're the source. And this bill still does not have a no strike provision in it. It simply says that a union organizer cannot recommend a strike. It doesn't say they can't strike. So there's some significant issues with it, but I will end it there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stone. I appreciate that you brought up about the letter. Yes, Mayor Thompson.
Or if we're done with that topic, I want to move on to it. Okay, thank you. I'm really happy about the visitation bill possibly going through for the visitation, but it does kind of frustrate me that we sat here today and we had a wonderful proclamation for older American months called Age My Way. And we cannot get over the finish line, the expansion of the Homestead Property Exemption Act to keep the seniors in their home where they want to stay. And I think we need to keep that a priority during the summer, watch the primaries and what happens and start putting the pressure on the people who think they're going to represent us the next time around. But this is something that needs to get across the finish line to increase the value of the home and make it portable. So if they need to move, I think we all have examples that we could tell about people that need to move for a variety of reasons, whether it be health reasons, family reasons, whatever. We need to continue working to get that bill across the finish line. And that just really frustrates me that we went back even I think for a third bite at the apple this time with Larry Liston and Jody working on that and still could not get it out of committee to put it on the ballot this fall for the citizens to vote on that. So I'd like to challenge us to still make that a priority to have happen again next year. And if you go out in the political season, you're talking to people that are candidates, ask them if they're going to support that directly, because it may not even be on their radar. It needs to be.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment as well. Are there any other comments or questions with regard to our legislative update from Jessica? Yes, Mr.
Roland Nardine, Callahan. What happened with the 002 homestead property tax exemption?
It was postponed indefinitely.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it was postponed indefinitely.
So
It's dead.
It died. Yeah. Which, that's another source of frustration because bills like that allow for people to move from maybe a larger home to a smaller home and things like that. And that actually gets us to a more efficient utilization of the housing product that is available in Colorado. I absolutely fail to understand why that would not be universally supported by everybody. All right, so that's one more bill. Thank you. Any other questions on any other bills? All right, thank you very much. Jessica, appreciate it. And again, congratulations. Oh, do we have to vote on something?
There is a proposed vote because there is an action to it.
Let's get to that. So sorry.
Is less than.
Can
Mr.
we
Chair.
vote that Jessica can't leave?
Oh,
Yeah,
we can vote,
I was
but I
going
don't
to
know
make
that.
a motion that Jessica can't leave.
I second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. No. Well, I mean, we could vote on that, but I think it would be more a proclamation than actual enforcement. Yeah, refresh my memory on the vote requirement here.
Move to approve to vote the legislative positions.
So moved, Eric Stone, Teller County.
Dick Elsner, second.
All right, so that is moved and seconded. Any last comments or questions with regard to the items here in the package on 5D?
I'd just like to thank everybody who gave up 8:30 on Monday mornings for months to be on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I'll express a similar sentiment. Thank you, everybody. John, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just as a point of clarification, if I remember correctly, some time ago, I believe the board has a policy where motions to support legislative actions require unanimous vote from our board. Is that correct or it's not? Okay.
No, we did actually modify that.
Okay.
And Andy, would you like to provide the clarity for Mr. Graham on the current?
Supermajority, is that where we
Supermajority, I
settled?
believe, right?
Yes, supermajority of those present.
And I believe that means 2/3.
Two-thirds, yes.
Thank you very much.
We can also pull off one bill if there was one we can amend the motion if you'd like.
I don't know if anyone has an issue. This is Dick Elsner, Park County, with anything, but seems to how all but one bill I think has already been dispensed with one way or the other. Unless we are taking an opposed position to a bill that passed, and then that could be sent on to the governor asking him to veto it. I think that would be another issue that we should look at, because just saying, hey, this is our position in the legislature doesn't necessarily do anything when it goes to the governor. We still may have another shot.
I appreciate that point, and perhaps one of those possible considerations that you might be referring to is 230.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Would you like to amend the motion? Maybe remove 230 from this particular motion, and then we'll call that up and have a conversation about that?
I would like to remove 230 from this motion, and that way we could then have a little discussion if we want to get on board as sending a letter as PPACG to oppose 230.
Very good. And for those that made the motion previously to support all of these positions, your amendment could be accepted as a friendly amendment. And if those that made the motion in the second
No objection, Mr.
accept that,
Chairman.
thank you very much. So we now have one motion presented at this point, which is to approve the legislative positions, except for 230, which will be called up and discussed separately after this vote. And Mr. Graham, I don't know if you have another one that you have a similar sentiment to, or it might have been 230 itself, but it might have been something else.
No, actually, it was more of an academic question. So, and the response was sufficient. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Donaldson.
Wouldn't we want to just go ahead and approve the positions which we have, which is strongly opposing 230, and then separately consider drafting a letter or proposing a position to be sent to the governor? Is there any
Yes.
real reason to to not have it, not support that position here?
I think what we've done is we've pulled it from here to have that very specific discussion on that bill. And the outcome of that might be exactly what you're asking for, but it's now going to be treated separately.
Understood.
Okay, thank you very much. So for everything other than 230, are there any remaining questions or comments on any of the other proposed positions? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed? All right, so those pass as stated in the record. And we do have Senate Bill 230 called up. And I suppose it's appropriate at this point to initiate that conversation. Yes, Mr. Stone.
I would move to maintain our current position of opposition since it hasn't passed, and also add to that a request from PPACG to the governor to veto should SB 230 pass through third reading today.
Okay, very good. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's start the conversation for the members of the board. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding that proposed motion?
Andy, we already had a letter that we sent in opposition to this through our lobbyist. Is that correct?
Right.
So it would just be a matter of modifying that letter a little bit and sending it to the governor.
Yeah, because that was even before the bill was filed. So that was a pre-filing objection. So we'll have to.
Initial letter was sent to the legislators.
Yeah.
Expressing our opposition to the concept of the bill because it had not yet been introduced. So it sounds like what we would like to do is create a letter to the governor with a specific request of veto this bill. And then I would just ask for those whose organizations or who have been working on letters of request for veto that they send those to me so I can revise that to be from the PPACG perspective and get that out.
Right. And I suppose we have a couple of options here. There is a letter already out there with 200 elected officials plus already signed up, which is requesting the governor to veto. So perhaps we could add the PPACG names if this vote goes that way, or maybe this is a separate form of correspondence.
I personally, Dick Ellsner, Park County, I think this should be a separate one. PPACG is a larger organization. It's becoming more and more important in Colorado. I think as an organization, it would carry a little more weight than just being another signatory on a letter.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions on this? And please speak up. This is our opportunity to hear points of view. All right, I am hearing none. And I don't see any hands raised online either. So I'm assuming there's no comments from online. I think we're at a point for a vote, but Andy, I think if we vote in the affirmative on this, I think it's maybe a recommendation for a separate letter. Is that acceptable to the
Yeah,
staff?
I think we're clear, but if we can get some language, just so we can kind of pair up what those concerns are with the board's permission, that would be good. And we could share it with the chair and the co-chairs of our legislative committee, if that would help as well, just to make sure that we've got the language just right.
Okay, great. And if we're going to proceed with the vote, I don't know if we may have a few that might vote no on this. So we might have to kind of count to make sure that we have a supermajority and so forth. So that is something that we'll have to take into consideration. So let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say.
Mr. Chair, I'd
Yes,
like to call
please.
for a voice vote, please, since we may have that happen. Let's just go ahead and do a voice vote. while we're-
Okay, so let's, I appreciate that point, and let's
I'm-
go
I-
ahead and
I'm sorry, I think the correct term might be roll call vote.
a roll call vote.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Council Member Avila. So a vote in the affirmative at this point would be to support continued opposition to Senate Bill 230 and also to recommend sending a separate letter to the governor that should it pass through the legislature, that we would send a letter to the governor asking him to veto the bill. That's what the statement of voting in the affirmative would be. And a vote to the negative would be to not support that. So that would be our consideration for the vote. Roll call vote. Andy, would you like to do a roll call? And what I'd like to do is ask.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
ask everybody to respond on their vote. Is this acceptable to everybody? Okay. Andy, you have a comment.
I'm a left-hander, so I was going to go to my left and just go around the table here and there, and then on the Zoom. I don't have the full roster right in front of me. So if that's acceptable, we'll do that as far as our roll call.
Okay, very good. Please go ahead and proceed with the roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Stone,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardine.
I say yes, and I feel we need to do a real proactive measure here, which we are doing, and that's why I say yes.
Okay, Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Donaldson,
Aye.
Councilmember Henson.
It's the way we do it.
Is that the way the city does it? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Avila,
No.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Chair,
Yes,
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
we have some
and
folks on.
Commissioner Bremer.
Yes.
I think Commissioner Williams had to drop off temporarily. Is that correct? Are you still there? Okay, and those are all the eligible voting members. So it passes 10-1.
10-1. I
Yeah.
think that counts as a supermajority and having a majority as well.
Yes.
Okay, so just to make sure, my direction to the staff, you feel clear with your direction that you've got? Okay.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And that took some time, but it was very important, and I appreciate everybody's indulgence on that. Do we have anything else on legislative update? I think we're done. She sat down, I'm done. That's the indicator. That's the nonverbal indicator. So, okay, very good. We're on to information items, and our first one is item 6A, our Tri-County study presentation.
Thank you. And Jason O'Brien is going to give you a brief update on our Tri-County study.
Thank you, Jason.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm going to drive from my laptop here. Okay. Tri-County study has been around for a few years now, so it's not a new concept. To give you a little bit of background, because it's been a few months since we checked in, Tri-County study concept was developed back in 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic, in response to a PPACG board observation that there hadn't ever really been an organized effort to support our rural jurisdictions in transportation planning and funding. So this was a direct response to that. Fast forward a couple years, last May, we were finally able to begin work. Because of the pandemic and some delays at the state funding level, a little bit of time went by. We had another check-in last fall with our PPACG advisory committees and this board. And we're probably going to we'll be coming back one more time for approval. So this is an information item while we still have a little bit of time to make some changes if you would like. A bit more context. So this is the first PPACG transportation study that looks at our whole council of governments region. Typically what we have, if you look at the figure on the right, the smallest boundary is our MPO area. That's where our federal funds really need to be spent per federal regulations. So we every few years on a regular basis, we have a long range plan that we complete for that area. And if you look at the largest outline that you see in the figure, that's our CDOT transportation planning region area, which also every few years gets a plan and some funding programmed, but there's never been a plan or a study for the green shaded area, which is PPACG. And so this is in response to that. And it's the first one we've ever done. And also, so in that context, the decision was made early on to focus primarily, not exclusively, but mostly on routes and facilities and the transportation system that doesn't get any other regular attention. So those would be the county, local, and regional routes and roads. And like I said, we've been working since last May. We've done one other check-in, and we're hoping to seek your approval in July. What we would like to get out of this, how we think this will help our members. So a quick note. Kind of like our long-range transportation plan, we're not able to directly program funding through this instrument, but what we want to do is provide a list of projects that our members would like to do, to show them in an adopted regional document to show support, so that when people go out for grant funding or formula funding, they'll be able to show that their projects are supported. So they'll be able to do a copy paste with their grant applications. Phase 2, which we recently started a couple weeks ago, will provide added detail for some of the projects and initiatives we hear about. And those are, I'll get into more detail on those later, but those are areas where there's a concern or an issue or an opportunity where there's not really an identified project concept for people to get behind yet. So the idea is that we would develop a project through the study. We'll provide funding support, funding plan, so that we're not just getting people's projects and saying, good luck out there getting this funded, trying to help take it a few more steps further along and identify the best funding. Regional perspective. As I mentioned, we've never done one of these. And then laying groundwork for possible future plans. Our project approach. So I'm going to be heavy on process here because the project tables are probably too extensive to go through in this meeting. So this is a study, not a plan. And the most significant difference is that we're not doing a project prioritization process for funding. So there's not going to be winners and losers or some projects recommended above others. We've got a project list of roughly 90 projects now that our members told us they would like to do. And we tried to be inclusive with those and not reject anything.
Just a moment. Councilwoman Hingham, I think, has a question.
Yeah, if you would, and if it's in your slides, great, or if you could just speak to, is there any possibility or part of the study that would address alternative alternative methods of getting into the mountains besides electric or gas powered vehicles? Or bus, you know, I guess, are there any possibilities of that kind of thing in the study?
We did look at transit pretty extensively, if that answers your question. Yeah. There was an almost universal interest in better east-west connectivity across the region for transit. So that would probably take the form of something like a Mustang or Outrider route that we would ask for. And there was a pretty broad support for something like that. Thanks for the question. So our overall project approach, our strategy for the project, we started out with a fairly exhaustive review of existing plans from our members and other partners to make sure we've got a little bit of perspective before we begin and to avoid duplication. A very robust stakeholder process. This is very much stakeholder driven with a lot of contact with our stakeholders at every point in the project. and then to create that long list of projects. Phase 2 takes some of those projects to a subset and identifies them for additional development. And then that funding support. And we're kind of in between phase 1 and 2 right now. We're just kicking off phase 2. I'm not going to read these in their entirety. It's a lot of text, but I'm going to go over it real quick because this is key direction we got from our stakeholders early on. So early in the project, we had 3 big meetings, one in each of our member counties. And we had some common themes come out of those that really guided the project since then. The first is that they affirmed our intention to focus on rural and small community areas outside of the MPO, because these are areas that don't typically get any attention from other planning efforts. And they affirmed the decision to focus on the county and local transportation facilities. So everybody was on board with that. Everybody's very concerned with growth across southern Colorado, especially pressure in the form of tourist traffic. We were asked to consider new sources of state and federal funding, and not just the usual sources. And this was a little bit of a surprise for me. Almost universally, everybody made the comment that we need better communications, better cell phone coverage, and better broadband coverage in the Tri-County area.
And if I might interrupt just for a second on the cell phone coverage. So what's been going on for me regarding cell phone coverage is that my cell phone service is degrading. It's going backwards. I used to have fantastic cell service at my house. Now I don't. And I used to have great cell service driving from my house to downtown Colorado Springs. And now about half of that distance does not have cell service anymore. It's actually been going backwards. And I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe it's a lot more signals in the air and they're interfering with each other or something. But I feel like in some places we're not going forward, we're going backward. Just making the point. So
yeah, thank you. Thanks for the comment.
Yeah, I know you don't know what to do with that comment. That's fine. I get it. But I'm going to make the point. I think in some places it's not getting better. It's getting worse.
And Mr. President, I don't think it's going to be news to you, but a lot depends on who your carrier is and which towers they have. So you might find better service with just a different carrier. There are maps you can see online also, which areas are covered.
Yeah, my service is Verizon, and they're showing universal coverage throughout Colorado Springs. But I can tell you on one part of where I'm driving into work, a competitor put up their tower about 100 feet from 115. And as soon as that tower started operating, Verizon stopped operating.
Yeah, maybe you should check into that competitor.
I did. As a matter of fact, I did. And I went to the FCC and complained, and you can imagine nothing happened. So anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. And I don't know how you want to handle it, Mr. Chair. There's a hand up. Should I address that now or?
Just take it as a point and we can just proceed forward. But I don't know if Mr. Elsner, you had something you wanted to say, but.
No, my only comment is your cell phone works most of the time. You get out into Park County and
doesn't work at all.
It doesn't work at all.
Yeah. And I appreciate that perspective. Thank you. I think Mr. Mosier has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance, and we actually had this conversation with the National Forest Service. And it is a discussion that goes in 2 directions. The Forest Service is not supporting additional towers on their properties, simply because they think going into the outdoors means leaving some of that behind. But at the same time, it does create an issue with communications throughout our area, because the Forest Service does have such a huge piece of our land. So it is a conversation taking place in several different areas.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Yes, Andy.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one more branch to this tangent. We are, and I don't know if you're going to get to this later, Jason, but we're setting up different subgroups as well to dig into different issues. And one is we're going to have a broadband working group that's sort of coming out of the Tri-County study, but also coming out of other interests across our jurisdictions, especially since there's so much money out there under the federal infrastructure. bill and other state funding opportunities. So this is, I think our first meeting's coming up next week, or is it later this week?
Thursday, next Thursday.
Super, next
Yeah.
week. So we could put this on their radar as well, not to overload them, but we want to see what we need to do, what we could do as a broad 3-county region around broadband, especially investing in middle mile infrastructure needs. But we could also let them know that this issue is coming up as well. I'm not sure what they might suggest, but it's going to be some of the technology folks and other folks involved in broadband planning.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll just offer the suggestion, and this is maybe kind of a continuation of my comment with regard to that particular tower. There is a federal statute that states that service providers, it's against the law for a service provider to interfere with another service provider's service. That's exactly what that tower is doing. And there's a bank about 150 feet from that new tower. And once the tower was up and started operating, every single employee in the bank lost their cell service. So nobody in the bank has cell service either. So it's that tower that's doing it. So that could be just something. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you know, I'll just make the point that there could be some other interesting kind of pathways or discussions about maybe strengthening the federal statutes about non-interference of competitors' services. Because I think there's a lot of that, frankly, going on.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We hadn't heard that comment yet, but I'm sure it's a thing.
I'd be happy
Yeah.
to introduce you to every employee of that bank. They're in my district.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks. That was a good aside. And you know, the significance of these things for this study is that there's a really big nexus with transportation for these things. Most significantly, I think, in terms of emergency planning. So the next thing I was going to do is just give you a quick little, this is a representative sample, I would say, of our stakeholder process. If I was to show you all of it, it would probably take up 4 or 5 slides. Altogether, there have been several dozen large and small meetings and individual interviews. So I'll just kind of hit the high points here. We had 3 different levels of stakeholders that we've been working with. The first is what we call our core stakeholders. And these are people who have sort of have their pulse on the counties, on the needs and opportunities, public works directors, county administrators, and a couple of commissioners who've been very helpful. And we've had a lot of contact with them and learned a great deal about the issues and opportunities in the counties from these folks. And they've also helped us fill in some information where we haven't gotten really great responses from some of the municipalities. We also had a layer of county stakeholder meetings. So we had a larger, kind of more diverse representation meeting in each county. So we're not just talking to a few people. We also developed focus groups early this year. There were a couple of common themes that kept coming up, and we thought it would be worth a little bit of a drill down in those areas. So instead of geographically based stakeholder meetings, we had a couple of topical meetings so that people who are a little bit more involved in these issues could talk in more detail. And those were roadway, emergency management, transit, trails, and technology and communications. So we got some nice detailed input through that. I wanted to spend just a minute talking about some of the challenges, especially because we've never done this before, and it's been interesting. We've learned a lot, and they pretty much stem from the first bullet here, is that there were no previous efforts like this to build on, and that while we have great relationships with all of our member governments, generally speaking, outside the MPO, we haven't had the same level of technical working relationships. We don't interface as much with the technical people. So we've met some great people, or in other cases, gotten to know them better and learned a lot about the counties and the municipalities. And for example, we don't have a lot of these folks on our TAC, which makes sense most of the time, because the TAC generally deals in federal funds that must be spent inside the MPO area. So if all these people were to be represented on our technical committees, we might know them a lot better, but I don't think it would be a very productive use of their time. So it's there's not really anything broken or wrong. It's just been an interesting complexity of the project. We've had some pretty uneven responsiveness at the municipal level, although we've had excellent responsiveness from the 3 counties. It's just been a little bit uneven, and again, not a problem. It's natural. Not everybody has the same level of interest or capacity. It's just been, we've just had to try to balance that a little bit. We've gotten a lot of feedback from one municipality and little or none from another. Just been an interesting complexity of the project. And then, of course, member and partner staff turnover. The last year, it's been real tough to maintain a contact list over a large geographic area because so many people are moving on, retiring, et cetera, et cetera. So just some interesting points that we've run into. And I know there's a lot of text here. I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to sort of flash this at you. And one of the things we did was our exhaustive study of existing plans. And these are nice and clearly laid out in the attachment for this item. So I'll just let you look at this at your leisure, if that's okay. But there were some common themes that came out. So, and they were pretty interesting. We weren't sure what those common themes would be at the start. So in addition to comp plans and transportation plans, we also looked at emergency plans. Because a few folks told us during the scoping of the project that this was going to be a pretty big issue. And you know, there were some key takeaways from looking at emergency plans too. And I'll just look at the red bullets, which are the problems that we identified. There's some great plans on a general level, but specific needs and challenges are usually not documented in the emergency plans. And there was a lot of frustration with the fact that we're not building with emergency planning in mind. It's all sort of happening on the back end, which is not very efficient or effective. So we got a number of comments that, you know, maybe emergency planning should be more integrated with transportation planning from the start. These are some of the outcomes that we thought were more interesting. So the last couple of slides were about a study of previous and existing plans, and these are more about what came out of the stakeholder process. So I've got just a couple of slides like this in a couple topical areas. So for emergency planning across the region, lack of capacity in emergency situations was a big deal. There's lack of shoulders, lack of alternative routes, and just a general lack of resiliency. Even in places where capacity is fine day by day, it's really not great for emergency situations. There are maintenance issues that are normally just a nuisance, but they could be life and death in an emergency situations, like vegetation clearing on evacuation routes and around cell towers, limited cell phone coverage, of course. There's not great coordination. One of the scenarios we heard about is, you know, one government's detour route for heavy traffic could be another community's only way in or out in an emergency. And so there's these overlapping, incompatible uses.
In just a minute, it looks like Councilwoman Hendrickson, you have a comment or question?
Could you just speak to what the emergency management projects, there's a couple of bubbles of red there, what those are referring to in the key?
Sure. Yeah, and I know these maps are not very visible here. They are larger and more visible in the attachment for the item. So you're, you know, review at your leisure. And so these are actually numbered proposed projects or issues in the map that they're connected with tables in the overall report in the attachment. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, but if you're looking in the attachment, you'll see the numbers are connected to projects in a table. Okay, yeah, thanks for the question.
And maybe another question, and perhaps our members from the Colorado Springs City Council could speak to this, but I believe you have an initiative going on right now to deal with improving emergency evacuation capacity, kind of based on like little regional nodes. I think you've got something like that going on right now. So
we have an ordinance, yeah, that's based on evacuation planning and creating zones through the entire city. With
Okay,
Zone
great.
Haven is the name of the.
I would be hopeful that you're well aware of that, and that whatever's going on in the city is going to get integrated into this, because that sounded interesting to me, what the city council was doing or what the city was doing.
I can double check and make sure that we're specifically looking at that. And I know we have talked with a couple people from the Colorado Springs Fire Department who've been
Okay.
involved.
Yeah, well, I would assume they would have shared that with you, but want to make sure it's relatively new.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me check into that.
Yeah,
And what would you call that specifically?
It's an ordinance for fire evacuation planning.
Okay, ordinance for fire evacuation plan. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor?
Yeah, on the, excuse me, on the last issue, the wildfire mitigation grants were noted to be available, but staff capacity to pursue them is limited. We had on part of our strategic plan, I believe, Andy, or maybe just conversations about PPACG potentially becoming kind of a clearinghouse with a grant writer and tracker, whatever you want to call it, to help the smaller municipalities with this issue. to be able to write grants, and then we would help do the tracking and stuff. Are we still working on that?
We're still digging into it, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to set up a couple of separate work groups, one dealing with broadband. We've got another one dealing with electric vehicle charging stations. Paul Rochette is working with wildfire management coordination needs, and we're trying to see what the need with the universe of projects might be first, and then try to figure out, okay, how would we actually fund a grant writer, grant researcher? So still work in progress. And I think there's demand and interest out there, but we're not quite at that point where we know exactly what we would start going after as far as grants.
Okay, yeah, because I know we're really interested now. You've met with Scott over that, but this to me is totally in our wheelhouse because it's air quality, water quality, any way we can help with this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is the only other really in-depth slide on a focus area. We heard a lot about transit, specifically in the rural areas. Some of the high points, the input that we seem to get over and over again. There's some great things going on in smaller areas as far as transit, paratransit. Longer trips are very challenging because of a lack of coordination and consistency. There is a significant population in the Tri-County area that is transit dependent and are unable to get to medical appointments and vital services. Paratransit suffers from inconsistency and confusion. Again, some good things and some good work going on locally, but when you get a little bit bigger in scale to the region, it kind of falls apart, and there's a lot of inconsistency and confusion. First and last mile connections, and then as like came up earlier, there's a lack of east-west connectivity, and a lot of people would like to see some kind of transit spine that crosses the region east to west, which again would probably be a Mustang or Outrider route. Just a couple of bullets about trails. Pretty endemic problems is that trails cross multiple jurisdictions and the purview of several agencies. So there's big problems with coordination, consistency. They can get pretty confusing. And a lot of them are bisected by roads where there's unsafe or unclear crossings. So phase 2 is where we're going to develop some of these projects in more detail. And I want to just give you a quick rundown of the logic that we used for this. So being chosen for this is, to be clear, doesn't mean anybody's getting any funding or anything like that. It just means that there was an issue or an opportunity somewhere that's not very well defined, and there's not a project that's been identified that people can get behind or that they can send out for grant funding. So our consultant team, we have retained the services of Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevig consultants to lead the project, by the way. They're going to work on, having some engineers and planners sit down and work up these projects. And the table here is just, it's just one row from a table in the document, just to show you the kind of logic that was used. In purple, there's sort of a comment about why this project was chosen for phase 2 development. And I think there's about 15 of these. And they really run the gamut in terms of project types. And a couple of people have asked about, why not this project or another project? And in several cases, it's just that some projects are actually a better fit for the 2050 long range plan, which we're going to kick off this summer. And so we didn't think it would be the best approach to include it here and maybe bump out another project that won't have the opportunity to get in that long range plan. And that's all I've got. Hopefully I've done a good job covering the process. And the full tables and all the detail are in the document. And they're easier to read, more visible and larger than I had them here. So,
Jason, when will we hear kind of the next steps in this process? How long will that be before we'll hear about that?
Hopefully we'll be coming back to seek your approval in July. That's the target.
Okay.
So yeah, in the meantime, we welcome any questions or comments as you review the project tables or the phase 2 selections or any other aspect of it.
Thank you.
And we'll send around the study. Again, it's a great document. It's got pages of a matrix of a bunch of different projects in these different categories. Gets to the emergency management projects that you were asking about, Councilmember. and all the others that Jason alluded to. So really good product. We're glad we were able to pull this together. So we'll get this out to you so you can take a look at it and bring it back for approval in July.
Yeah, I just want to say, taking part in this was very helpful for Park County because when the study is done, we have the feeling that, hey, we need to fix this, but we can't convince anybody outside of Park County that we need to fix some things. This study really points out some issues that I think will put us in a position where the county can look at county roads that this identified as really critical to state as far as resiliency. And, if you close the road around Fairplay, how do you get anywhere? It's going to identify those as projects that we as a county then can look at and say, it's of state interest, it's of county interest. Maybe we can take all of this and go after some, additional funding because it's just not our problem. It is really a statewide issue, but it wasn't identified anywhere as, oh, that is a statewide issue, and that probably be a good idea to fix.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been great working with everybody. And also, like I said, getting to know the folks that we haven't worked with so closely or on such technical level in the past.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Jason? And I'll just maybe finish by saying it's great that we're doing this. I'm glad that we're engaged in this, and thank you for your work on it. And I don't mean to belabor the point about cell phone coverage, but yeah, there's in a lot of the maps that I've seen that talked about both internet and cell coverage in El Paso County, they show green in a lot of areas, but when you talk to the residents, it's not green.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those maps are not accurate. Yeah, that's right. Need a extra 20 feet on the antenna or something. But
well, it's a big issue. We did get a lot of comments about it. So a lot of people are thinking about it. And one last thing, I misspoke earlier, Andy, it's the broadband working group meeting is tomorrow at 2:30, not next week.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item number 7, unless Andy, you've got something to bring up.
No, just Jessica, I think is just going to super briefly hit some of the highlights from the most recent strategic plan quarterly report.
Oh, great. Thank
It'll be
you.
brief. Yeah.
Okay, hello, board members. Jessica Mcmullan again. I am just here to give you a quick reminder. So your first in strategic plan in the history of PPACG was done at our 50-year anniversary. That was 2000. It was actually, the anniversary was 2017, but we did the strategic plan in the 18. This plan was updated in 2020 to recognize the growth in programs. We do try to regularly maintain it. And more important, we try to keep this a live document. And the best way to do that is tell you guys what we're doing to make progress on the goals you set. Just want to highlight some of the major things, the biggest ones. In advocacy, we brought those long-term care issues to the board and hosted that roundtable that many of you attended. We actively worked with Senator Larry Liston to write the updated senior homestead tax exemption bill. Even if the bill died, we did a lot of work, and that was very important for our relationships. Information sharing, we released an interactive crash data map that is fascinating. And if you didn't look at it when we gave you information about that before, go check it out. It's on our website. There's a link straight from our homepage. And we began conversations with various stakeholders in the community about a potential regional futures forum. In aging, we received a grant from NADTC for $20,000 to do a needs assessment in the community for transit items. And we supported a tenant-based rental assistance program that'll be housed at Silver Key for older adults that are being displaced out of their homes or apartments. We're doing a lot of work on that housing for older adults. In transportation, we conducted stakeholder and focus group meetings for the Tri-County study that Jason just talked about. You guys now know how awesome it is, and hosted an MMOF workshop to help local governments access this funding source. As well as we did a lot of work on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is in the program excellence. In the military planning program, we completed the analysis of the wildfire grant mitigation funding opportunities and shared those with firefighting agencies in the wildfire urban interface. The Air Quality Technical Committee has met every month to continue to work on ways to raise awareness of air quality issues, focusing on ground level ozone, so we can follow your guidance in helping reduce that ozone before we go out of compliance with EPA standards. And the board adopted the 23-20 fiscal year 23-27 tip in January, which put PPACG back into alignment with CDOT's STIP. So those are some of the major things. Your attachment went into a lot more detail, and I hope you guys looked at that. There's been a lot of progress, and that's been true every quarter when we give these to you. Does anyone have any questions about what we reported on, or want to know anything more about that?
Great. Thank you very much. I mean, maybe to one extent, we're all a little exhausted, but on the other side of the coin, I do appreciate what the staff is doing on these items. And I also appreciate your presenting them to us with regard to, our compliance with our strategic plan that we have at present. And the work is great. You can see some of the items here, but I am certain that that is not all inclusive. I know there's a lot more that you've done. So thank you. Yeah. Councilwoman.
Yeah,
Hendrick.
no questions, but just would like to really echo what you said, Chair Vanderwerf. Keeping a strategic plan alive is really critical, and keeping it in front of us and reporting. And thank you, Jessica, for your support with that. And just really want to wish you the best as well. We're going to miss you. It's a loss. Boo-hoo for us, but yay for your next organization.
Well, my favorite part is just the last moment here. You said, and we raised $20,000, and it made that $20,000 feel like $20 million. The emphasis you had on it was awesome. So,
and those small steps to those grants to do the studies lead to those big numbers you guys see again.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important.
Mr. Gardine.
I'd like to reinforce our second, not letting her leave.
I think that's a second on the second. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have anything else then for 6B? Are we good? Okay. Let's move on to 7A, the military installation reports. Let's see who we still have online. Okay, Mr. Biondo. Okay, and also Colonel Jung. Mr. Biondo, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Not a lot, well, it all depends on perspective, I guess. We've got a lot of things happening within the bar. We're getting a lot of visits, attention at Shine Mountain. We have an assistant secretary of defense coming here tomorrow.
Mr. Biondo, my apologies. It is a little difficult for us to hear. Maybe if you could just get a little closer to your mic.
Okay, let me see if I can help out with the gain here a little. Apologize for that. How about now? Is this better?
That's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, copy that. So we have an Assistant Secretary of Defense over at Peterson today. They'll be coming out to Shine Mountain. We're getting a little bit of attention for Shine Mountain in terms of investment in our infrastructure here. So we're getting a lot of DoD level of attention, as well as high within the Space Force and the Air Force. We've had several over the last year ish. We've had, of course, Representative Lamborn has been out. Several other congressional delegates have been out to Shine Mountain. But we're also going to be standing down our mission support group this next week. It's it's all part of an evolving organizational vision that the Space Force has in mind. The mission support group is typically headed by an 06 with a deputy or two resources. So that staff echelon is going to go, but mission support groups usually handle our civil engineers, security forces, communications, logistics readiness, personnel, morale, welfare, recreation, those types of functions. But that group echelon is going to disappear, but we will still have the capability from those representative organizations from below the group. So kind of a big deal, as we change from an Air Force look to more of a Space Force look. So yes, that evolution continues. Other than that, I don't have a lot from Peterson Schriever Garrison unless you've got something for me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your update. Are there any questions for Mr. Bionda? All right. Thanks again for that update. And I'm sure you're taking care of that assistant secretary well.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, Colonel Jung from Air Force Academy, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. As you might expect, our big focus is on graduation, and that's going to be our focus for the remainder of the month. As a reminder, the ceremony will be held on Wednesday, May 25th, which is exactly 2 weeks from today. So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to report that I can confirm that the Secretary of Defense will be the speaker. And we are also expecting the Secretary of the Air Force and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to attend, along with several other distinguished visitors. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions about graduation.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions for the Colonel on the Air Force Academy graduation? And, yes, Councilman Donaldson.
Yeah, Colonel, how did it turn out as far as allowing spectators in the stadium for graduation? Is it open like it used to be, or is it still restricted?
It's not quite as open. I think each cadet, I want to say they got 20 tickets. So we're expecting about 24,000 people to attend. So it'll be very close to what we've seen in the past.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that answer. And for your awareness, I will be there and looking forward to it. And maybe there may be some others on our board that will also be there. All right. I don't think there's any other questions, Colonel, for the graduation. Do you have other items?
Just one more thing, if I could, this will be my last PPACG meeting as I'll be moving on to a new assignment. I just wanted to say, Colorado Springs is my hometown. I'm actually a Doherty High School grad. My parents still live here. I love Colorado. If I could stay here, I'd stay here forever. But I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Chair and the board, it's been great to participate in the meetings over the last 4 or 5 months. And the thing that resonates with me is just how passionate the board members are and how much you care about the community. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking such great care of this community, and best of luck to everybody.
Oh, thank you, Colonel, for those kind words. And you know what that means is when it's time for you to retire, I bet you we will see you back here.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions for the Colonel at this point? I'll just finish by saying congratulations to the graduates. Looking forward to the ceremony. And thanks again to the Air Force Academy for being such a great neighbor to our community. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have anybody else? We have anybody from Fort Carson? Okay. I don't see them either. All right. So let's go ahead and proceed. Item 7B through G are no presentations, minutes are included. Let's go to the CDOT monthly update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, we're going to keep this relatively short for you this morning. So just one thing, sound like a broken record. Work continues on the greenhouse gas policy directive. There's going to be an update at STAC on Friday with regard to that, anticipating a vote next week at Transportation Commission on the policy directive. The only other thing I'd like to mention specifically is on June 9th, there's a regional transportation project tour being coordinated with PPACG. And so just kind of some of the logistics, you should have received an email on this and, request that you RSVP back to Jessica. But, some of the logistics, we're going to be meeting here at 7:30 in the morning, be doing a preliminary briefing. And then we will load vans and begin the project tour at 8 o'clock, and we'll be back here no later than noon on that date. Some of the projects we'll be looking at are the MAMSIP project, so all the various phases associated with MAMSIP on I-25, Highway 94. Be looking at Powers and Airport, Bradley Road and Powers, the area for the South Powers extension, be stopping there briefly. Looking at the Powers and Research project, and also taking a look at even though it's not under construction right now, kind of giving an overview of the I-25 Garden of the Gods to Fillmore project. So we hope you folks are able to participate and join us in that tour. And I know John and Andy have been instrumental in trying to get that organized as well. So thank you for your efforts in that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate putting that all together. Yes, Councilman Donaldson.
Just a question, Rich, did you say June 9th?
Yes, sir.
And I just noticed that we don't have a invite, calendar invite for that. Is it possible that one gets sent out so it's locked into the calendar?
That's a good question. Yes, we can do that. And just either accept it or deny it. That would be a good way to keep track of participation. Good.
Yeah, thanks.
Super.
And I can say that I did receive an invite, and I've instructed my staff to RSVP that I'll be going. So I'll be on that, but it wasn't something connected to a calendar invite. It was just like an email kind of invite. Yeah. Yes, Mayor?
I was just wondering if you can work with our emergency responders. There's been 3 fires this last week on between exit 128 and 132. One was a guy's truck was on fire and he had no place to pull over on a shoulder to get off the freeway. So he had to continue driving up the freeway quite a distance to drive down through the weeds to catch them on fire, to catch the neighbors, and then the emergency responding vehicles could not get to it because of the cement blocks on each side and nowhere, they're just sitting there. And I was watching it from my balcony burn and hoping it didn't cross to my side of the freeway. Then the second one was, I believe, I can't remember what the second one was. And the one the other day with the semi blew the tire, which put him out into the, I think the other trailer one was they lost a tire too and ended up nowhere to go and pulling forward. And we're just really, to me, it's a huge safety issue. We cannot get our first responders to where they need to go once the accident happens between those cement blockades. And already had 3 of them in 1 week this summer that resulted in 3 wildfires with people not being able to get there. So I don't know what the answer is, but we're going to be doing some lane changes in the next week to change it around, maybe something that could be considered there on, because once Bandley also, we started dumping off on the Bandley and then they couldn't get there either. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, the project team does coordinate with first responders, I think every 2 weeks. And so, I'm sure that will be a topic of conversation coming up in one of those meetings. So we're in continuous conversation with our first responders to, understanding where to access and how to access and what we can do differently and better throughout the project. So,
okay.
Well, that 4-mile stretch of road, as soon as you complete design on how first responders can access that area, that's when no more vehicles will catch on fire within that 4-mile lane, 4-mile section. But you know what? That's a good thing. So.
Well, they've burned a lot of the grass this week that caused that issue.
Yeah.
But
So I guess the risk is lowered a little bit, but that's not the way you want to lower the risk.
No. Yeah. But they haven't burned it by my property that's up to CDOT. So.
All right. Thank you.
And the construction is ongoing, so things are changing constantly. And that's why we do meet every 2 weeks just to continue to have conversations with first responders. So, and as you noted, just one thing I'll mention real quick, since we are talking about MAMSIP, there is going to be a traffic switch, hopefully here in the next couple of weeks, where traffic will be switched in more of a head-to-head configuration. So we can start building the concrete pavement on the other side. So that's a big milestone within this project that we're looking forward to.
Great. Thank you.
And then finally, I'll just say, if you have specific questions about projects, we can bring Shane up to the podium. Otherwise, we'll leave it at that.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions for CDOT at this point? We've had several great conversations already today, so we might have all of those questions answered at this point. All right. Let's go to the stack update. I don't see her.
Then, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'll take care of it real quick. There was a discussion on regionally significant definition, as well as a discussion on transportation capacity. To save time, I will say that several of you have come to Andy and asked to have a presentation, a staff presentation at the board. So we're actually going to be on the agenda for the TAC meeting this next week. And so then next month, we'll come to you and sort of give you a GHG update of everything that's going on. And by then, maybe we'll know more of what the actual final rule will be, because the Transportation Commission, as Rich had mentioned, is scheduled to take action on that next week. There was also a discussion on the transit. If you recall, we had a lot of conversations about transit, and we said, hey, we're going to pull off our stuff until the state does their transit discussion. So the STAC did have a discussion on the transit. They're going to maintain that 10% set aside for transit, and they're going to backfill the funding from FTA funds as well as other sources. There was concern when that was originally brought up that the maintenance and operation for CDOT routes and maintenance and operations was going to come to the detriment of the regions. And so Commissioner Elsner and others made sure that they pointed out maybe how that was not a good idea. And then CDOT went back and sort of reconfigured their budget and found the funding from other sources. So that did pass the STAC. So in a related note, now that will be coming back to you for our transit portion of our 10-year plan at your next month's board meeting. And then finally, there was an update on the rest areas. They gave us an overview of the progress made on the Vale rest area, as well as they put together a committee to do a strategic look at their overall rest area strategies. Commissioner Elsner, am I forgetting anything else of import?
Nothing of import.
Or export?
It might be interesting to, if you're, before you bring that next month, I believe was the April meeting, there was a slide deck in the presentation on explaining how they came to the regionally significant, whatever you just said, projects. And I read through that and I really, really learned a lot from that slide deck. So it might be, if you can get a link to people before the meeting, so we can kind of have a little bit of background information on it. I mean, by the time I got to the last slide in the deck, it made a lot more sense than when I started. So
Are you talking about the April stack packet?
I believe it was in the April.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure I send out the right thing. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like obviously running a month behind on looking at their presentations.
No, but it's still a great suggestion because it'll help everybody be prepared for June's meeting.
Yeah, I just thought it had a
So-
lot of good information in it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Thank
It's
you.
very confusing, lots of moving parts. So yeah, anything we can help to cut through the confusion, that would be good. Yeah.
Great. All right. Any questions with regard to stack updates from anybody? And seeing none, let's move on to the executive director's report. Andy.
Thank you. Just two items real briefly. If you'll recall at our retreat, the board's retreat back in December, we talked about the notion of maybe holding a board meeting in Park or Teller County. I think if we're going to do that, it would probably be in the July or August timeframe. What I'll do is I'll reach out to Commissioner Elsner and Commissioner Stone and see if that's something that we think we could pull off this year. We'll try to figure out where and when, but I'll also send out an email to the board to gauge your interest and see if that's something you still think we can pull together. A little bit complicated for those that also serve on the PPRT board in the afternoon, but recognize that this would be a hybrid meeting. Those that can make it to either Woodland Park or Fairplay or Cripple Creek, that it would be a good opportunity. And also for those communities to kind of show off what's going on in their part of the region. So more to come on that. I'll follow up with an email to gauge interest.
You're all more than welcome in Cripple Creek.
Thank you.
Jeff.
And I think I'm glad that we're trying to do this. I think, we've got great partners in Teller and Park, and they always come down here and we owe them at least one visit out to their place as a board. I think that's appropriate.
And that was the idea. I think that, one year we meet in say Park County, the following year in Teller County, and just sort of alternate like that.
Yeah.
could we make it a month with a short meeting because to
Yes.
allow a
Yep.
little bit of transportation time?
Well, and if it's in Park County, we will provide food. It's not donuts in the morning. We will give you lunch.
Thank you, sir. That's awesome.
You have good fishing up there or what?
We have fantastic fishing in Park County. I'm just not going to tell you where.
I'll bet we could get our CDOT partners to help us with a
But-
van for that too,
We've
right?
already,
Some,
Rich is already offered
yeah,
that.
But
there you
We
go.
can-
the fishing does sound like a priority for the afternoon of that day that we hold a board meeting up there. So
Right.
great, thank you.
And just real briefly, this is separate from PPACG, but PPRTA, our annual reports are out as well, and they're available in the back of the conference room. Good info. in there.
Great. Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay. Are there any announcements that any member would like to make at this point in time? And we've run, long, so it's been a long meeting. But nonetheless, you may have something you need to mention. Yes, please. Councilwoman Hendrickson.
Yeah, just super quick. And this is really primarily targeted to City of Colorado Springs, but would impact folks who drive in Colorado Springs. Connect COS is the long-range transportation planning for the city. And there will be open houses and interactive information at each of the district areas. There's a information on when those are starting actually this coming Monday. And the Platte Avenue Corridor Project, which is improvements of Platte from I-25 all the way out to Powers, is going to be highlighted at the districts 3, 4, and 5 meetings. And that goes through all of May. You can go to any of them and get the same information. And just encourage people who are interested to go to those. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Yeah, we're almost there. And I have no announcements myself. Just a reminder, our June meeting will be at 9 a.m. on the 8th of June. And since we have no further business, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you, everybody, for your 3 hours.
I was not hungry till that smell came.
Yeah.
across the
Yeah, I
street.
know.
I thought,
Could
"Man,
smell
there goes
food."
this